Chapter 542. Hearing the two words Blood Emperor, the faces of all the ministers and officials changed. They were even more terrified than when they heard that hundreds of counties had been massacred. Your Majesty, we can't let the Blood Emperor come out. According to the prophecy, if the Blood Emperor comes out, the general corpse world will fall into eternal damnation. The ministers all tried to persuade him. One of the generals shook his head. That was in the past because we didn't have a way to deal with the Blood Emperor. But now, our general corpse world has been developing for more than 10,000 years and we have hundreds of ways to kill the Blood Emperor. After he exterminates those bandits, we can just kill the Blood Emperor. What is there to be eternal damnation about? The ministers all shook their heads. Your Majesty, we can't do that. 10,000 years ago, the Blood Emperor came out and massacred countless lives. At that time, the king paid a huge price to seal the Blood Emperor. If he comes out again, it will be hard to avoid another calamity. Your Majesty, although we have many ways to kill the Blood Emperor, it is only in theory and has never been tested. What if we can't kill the Blood Emperor? Although those bandits are despicable, the destruction they cause is far less than the Blood Emperor. Using the Blood Emperor to stop them is equivalent to exchanging a large injury for a small one. It is not worth it. On the main seat, the general corpse king Spartacus scratched his wrinkled but shiny head. He said, "Then what methods do you have to stop those bandits?" The ministers all shook their heads. They couldn't think of any other way to stop those bandits. Those bandits came and went without a trace. They couldn't even catch their shadows. Moreover, even if they could catch up with the bandits, how were they going to catch them? Those bandits were very powerful and could even massacre a city with a population of more than 1 million. Even if they sent an army of more than 1 million to deal with them, it wouldn't be effective. Not to mention, they didn't have that many soldiers now. The general corpse king had already sent an army of more than 10 million to the flame-beginning continent. It was impossible to summon them back in a short time. Spartacus saw that all the ministers were silent. He pondered for a long time and his gaze became firm. He said, "Let the Blood Emperor fight. But before he fights, we can give him the corpse-dissolving powder. We can also prepare many defensive measures. If he dares to act recklessly, there are hundreds of ways to kill him." When the corpse generals heard this, they could only respond. The king is wise. They knew that once the king had made up his mind, it would be useless for them to persuade him otherwise. Moreover, it was very likely that he would be greeted with a sentence, "Drag him out and chop him up." That afternoon, Spartacus went to the mountain behind the palace alone, to the underground prison 5 kilometers deep. This prison was extremely large, and the security measures were extremely tight. Not only was there a spatial seal to prevent teleportation, but there was also no air hole. The prison was surrounded by thick layers of rocks. There was only one general corpse in the entire prison, the Blood Emperor. Spartacus came to the prison door and ordered the soldiers guarding the door to open the observation hole on the door. He glanced inside. Then he said to the soldier, "Open the prison door." The soldier was slightly hesitant. "Your Majesty, this is too dangerous for you." "How about, cut the crap, open it." The soldier hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes." Then, he opened the heavy prison door. There were 3 prison doors. The first 2 were made of 3-meter-thick concrete and steel. The third was made of the hardest metal in the kingdom of general corpses, Yuccal metal. The 3 large doors slowly opened, and King Spartacus entered the prison. This was a spherical prison with a diameter of over 10 meters. In this spherical prison, there were a total of 5 thick chains. These 5 chains chained the legs, hands, and neck of a humanoid creature. His head was facing down, his feet were facing up, and he was suspended in the air. Those chains that were as thick as a person's thigh were already covered in a thick layer of dust. Looking at this humanoid creature, he seemed to have once been a corpse ancestor. His wrinkled skin was proof of this. But at this moment, the clothes on the corpse ancestor's body had been reduced to tattered pieces of cloth. His exposed body looked as shriveled as a vacuum-packed chicken. The blood in his body seemed to have been sucked dry, leaving only a layer of wrinkled skin wrapped around his bones. His eyelids had sunk into his eye sockets. His body was also covered in a thick layer of dust. His nostrils had long been blocked by the dust. Spartacus's body slowly floated up, and he arrived in front of this wrinkled mummy. With a mysterious smile on his face, he moved closer to the mummy's ear and said, "It has been 10,000 years. The former blood emperor should have reappeared in the world." The mummy didn't have any reaction. Spartacus used his sharp fingertip to cut open his palm. He dripped a drop of black blood onto the mummy's body. A moment later, this drop of blood quickly merged with the mummy's body. Soon, the mummy's body started to squirm. Slowly, it turned from shriveled to full. About 2 minutes later, his body was completely full. He had already returned to the appearance of a normal corpse ancestor. But there was a hole in his throat. This hole seemed to have been made by a red-hot steel bar. And even with the Blood Emperor's self-healing ability, he was actually unable to heal that hole. His face didn't look like an ordinary corpse ancestor's. Instead, it seemed to be full of abscesses, and traces of yellow mucus were oozing out. It looked extremely disgusting. His eyes slowly opened, revealing his blood-red pupils. When he saw Spartacus, he revealed an extremely angry expression. From his throat that had a big hole, he let out a hoarse roar, hiss, hiss, hiss. He continued to struggle, causing the chains to clatter. Spartacus faintly smiled and said, "I like to see this kind of expression on your face when you want to kill me but can't do anything about it. But, this time, you have to listen to me." After he finished speaking, the angry expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes suddenly disappeared. Only a lifeless expression could be seen. Spartacus said, "Right now, there is a group of bandits causing chaos in my corpse ancestors' country. They have already massacred hundreds of cities. You have to find that group of bandits and kill them. Do you understand?" The lifeless expression in the Blood Emperor's eyes became sharp again. It was as if he had found his target in an instant. He nodded his head, and from his throat that had a big hole, he let out 2 sounds, hiss. When the corpse ancestor saw this scene, even though he was 300 meters tall, he still felt a chill in his heart. He had been guarding the Blood Emperor for more than 200 years. In front of him, the Blood Emperor was like a mummy. For the past 200 years, the Blood Emperor had never moved. He even felt that the Blood Emperor might have already died. But today, it was the first time he saw the Blood Emperor's true face. Chapter 543. Spartacus reached out and clapped his hands. Crash, 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 the thick chains around the Blood Emperor's neck, arms, and legs fell to the ground. Blood Emperor also fell to the bottom of the ball-shaped prison cell. Furthermore, he landed on his head first. He looked extremely miserable. After a long while, he finally moved. However, his movements were very strange. It was not his arms and legs that moved first. Instead, it was his head that was facing down that slowly turned. After a while, his head and back were standing at a 90-degree angle. This scene was extremely strange. Seeing this, the soldier at the door broke out in cold sweat. After that, the Blood Emperor's legs and arms also began to move. At the same time, he pushed his body up. At this moment, he did not look like a humanoid creature. Instead, he looked like a locust. After a while, he slowly stood up. Spartacus turned around and walked out of the cell. The Blood Emperor also followed behind him and walked out of the cell. The moment the Blood Emperor walked out of the cell, the soldier at the door felt an extremely dangerous feeling in his heart. It was as if his head would be separated from his body in the next moment. Even when he was facing the king, he had never felt such a feeling. The Blood Emperor was too terrifying. Half an hour later, Spartacus brought the Blood Emperor to the mountain behind the palace. He looked to the west and said, "He should be there. Go." The Blood Emperor looked to the west and let out a hoarse sound that made one's scalp numb. Hiss! After that, his body floated up and disappeared from the palace. Spartacus looked at the place where the Blood Emperor disappeared and a strange smile appeared on his face. The Blood Emperor teleported 100 kilometers away. This place was a field. The field that was planted by the zombie farmers was green and full of life. In the Blood Emperor's deep eye sockets, his blood-red eyes slowly closed. After a while, a small thing flew over from afar. He stretched out his right hand and caught it. It was a locust. Of course, the locust in the zombie world was much bigger than the one in the flaming origin continent. A locust was the size of an owl. It landed on the Blood Emperor's right hand and lowered its head. It extended a pair of sickle-like mouthparts and instantly cut the Blood Emperor's arm. After that, it started to bite the Blood Emperor's flesh. The Blood Emperor didn't seem to feel any pain as he lowered his head to look at the corpse General Locust. Very quickly, the corpse locusts ate the blood locust's entire forearm until only the bones were left. At the same time, the corpse locusts were also rapidly transforming. Its body turned from brown to red. First the legs, then the tail, the abdomen, and finally the torso. Finally, it was the head. Its entire body had turned blood red. There was a bloodthirsty look in his small eyes. The Blood Emperor's right arm, which only had traces of blood and bones left, lightly waved. The blood-red corpse General Locust flapped its wings and flew towards the nearby corpse General Farmer's courtyard. Not long after, several screams were heard. In just 10 minutes, a blood-red corpse locust flew out with more than 10 blood-red locusts. One day later, the swarm of blood-red corpse General Locusts had grown to more than 100. 2 days later, there were over 1,000 of them. 3 days, 10,000. 4 days, 100,000. The number of corpse locusts increased exponentially. They weren't like the corpse general ants, which only had one queen and could give birth to shadow queens. All of the corpse general locusts were hermaphrodites. Although a corpse general locust could only give birth once in its life, every single one of them could give birth. This was quite terrifying. On the 10th day, the number of corpse general locusts had reached a terrifying 10 billion. Moreover, it was still increasing at a rate of 10 times per day. At this moment, the blood-red corpse general locust swarm was like a huge blood cloud. Wherever the corpse general locust swarm passed, not even a blade of grass grew. The corpse general locust swarm ate everything. When they passed through the grassland became bare. When they passed through the forest, all the trees in the forest were only 10 meters tall. Even the branches were eaten clean. These corpse general locust swarm especially liked flesh and blood. When they passed through the forest, all the corpse general beasts nearby, whether they were super-evolved corpse general beasts or ordinary corpse general beasts, were eaten until only the bones were left. As for the cities they passed through, whether it was a small town with 10,000 corpse general locust swarm or a big city with 1,000,000 corpse general locust swarm, they were all massacred. It was just like when Mosher led the corpse ants to massacre these cities. The difference was that the corpse ants ate even the bones. And these corpse general locust swarm were only left with white bones. This was the price to pay for releasing the Blood Emperor. The Blood Emperor was actually also called the Blood Locust. When it was called the Blood Emperor, it referred to the leader of the Blood Locust swarm, the corpse ancestor. When it was called the Blood Locust, it referred to the leader and the corpse general locust swarm that was like a blood cloud that filled the sky. In the corpse general world, there was such an idiom, flying locust swarm. It meant that wherever the Blood Locust swarm passed, the people would be in a terrible situation. At this moment, the corpse general world would once again be filled with flying locust swarm. Spartacus City, in the palace. King Spartacus sat high on the throne carved from the skull of a corpse beast that was level 10 super-evolved. He listened to the continuous reports from below. Your Majesty, Kildare City was destroyed by the Blood Locust swarm. None of the 300,000 general corpses survived. Your Majesty, Sloane City was destroyed by the blood locust swarm. None of the 150,000 general corpses survived. Your Majesty, Ayuan City was destroyed by the blood locust swarm. 103 million general corpses. None survived. The ministers all felt grief in their hearts. The speed at which the blood locust massacred the cities was much faster than the bandits. At this rate, in less than half a year, the entire corpse general world would be filled with blood locust. And the Blood Emperor would be undefeatable. They did not understand why His Majesty had to release the blood locust. Your Majesty, the ministers were all confused and felt heartache. And their Majesty's mouth had a strange arc that was hard to detect. Then, his expression became stern as he scanned the ministers below. His voice contained a trace of grief. If we don't release the Blood Emperor, who can stop those bandits? Those bandits are uncontrollable. We still haven't seen what they look like. And we can control the Blood Emperor, but we have to give him some benefits. Now, these destroyed cities are the price we have to pay. The general corpses in these cities will not die in vain. We will remember them forever. We will remember the sacrifice they made for the corpse general world. Although the ministers still felt heartache, they had nothing to say. If they did not release the Blood Emperor, they really had no other way. Furthermore, they had over 100 ways to kill the Blood Emperor. This was much better than letting them face those bandits that came and went without a trace. Seeing that the ministers did not say anything, Spartacus' mouth once again had an undetectable arc. Chapter 544. The general corpse world was experiencing two calamities. On one side, Mo was leading the corpse general ants to massacre the city. On the other side, the blood locusts were massacring the city. Of course, the damage caused by Mo was far less than the blood locusts. The corpse general ants only increased by 10,000 per day. The blood locusts increased by 10 times every day. 100 million today, 1 billion tomorrow, and 10 billion the day after tomorrow. Therefore, the damage caused by the blood locusts could increase by 10 times every day. In just 10 days, the initial damage could reach 10 billion times. On this day, Mo massacred a city. Looking at the kill points in his mind. 800 trillion. It was still far from 100 trillion. He couldn't help but worry. If it was like this, when would he be able to get 100 trillion kill points? Sigh, as long as the giant dragon hadn't arrived at the flaming land, he would continue to collect kill points here. He only hoped that the giant dragon would arrive a little later so that he could get more kill points. Thinking of this, his dragons will spread out to thousands of kilometers to find the next city. However, at this moment, Mo suddenly frowned slightly. He detected a red cloud floating in the sky 1,000 kilometers to the east. To be exact, this red cloud almost occupied half of the sky. It covered the sky and covered the sun. This red cloud was flying towards a city below. A moment later, this red cloud fell into the city below. Immediately, screams sounded everywhere. In less than 10 minutes, the city below was covered in blood. All the general corpses had turned into eerie white bones. This red cloud continued to take off and fly towards this side. Wherever it passed, it was a mess. The grass and leaves were all swallowed by this red cloud. A swarm of blood-red locusts. Mo frowned slightly. The number of this swarm of locusts was much larger than his ant colony. Then, he used the demon dragon's eye to detect the level of these blood-red locusts. Species, General Ant, Level 1 Super Evolved, Ability, Devour. Looking at another one, it was also a Level 1 Super Evolved Beast. Each blood-red locusts had reached Level 1 Super Evolved Beast. And he didn't know if there were 100 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, or 100 billion Super Evolved blood locusts here. Such a huge force was truly terrifying. One had to know that each blood locust was equivalent to a Grade 1 Grand Desolate Master. With such a large number of grand desolate masters, no matter where they went, they would definitely be in existence that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. At this moment, the swarm of blood locusts was flying towards Immortal. Immortal didn't know if it was a coincidence or if they were here for him. However, he already had an idea. Thus, he led the corpse commander ants towards the blood locusts. On the third day, Immortal finally saw the blood locust swarm in the distance. At this moment, the size of the blood locust swarm seemed to be 1,000 times larger than it was 3 days ago. F***CKU. Immortal couldn't help but curse. The production capacity of this blood locust swarm was too abnormal. If his corpse general ants had such an abnormal production rate, he wouldn't have to work so hard. Now that he was close enough, Immortal carefully probed again. He noticed that there was a corpse ancestor within the swarm of blood locusts. Although this corpse ancestor seemed to be in an invisible state, that's right, he seemed to be able to turn invisible. This was the first creature Immortal had encountered that could turn invisible. When he was invisible, Immortal couldn't detect his existence at all. Even his dragon consciousness couldn't detect him. He would only reveal a trace of his aura occasionally. Immortal guessed that there was a corpse ancestor hidden within the blood locust swarm based on this trace of aura. He was secretly on guard, and a layer of black dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body. This was much safer. At this moment, when the blood locust swarm saw the huge number of corpse general ants, they immediately let out squeaking sounds in excitement. It was unknown whether there were 10 billion, 100 billion, or 1 trillion blood locust. When they squeaked at the same time, the sound was like thunder. The blood cloud began to envelop the corpse general ants. Immortal looked at the sky full of blood locust and felt his scalp go numb. He couldn't help but shake his head. After setting up a virtual sentry tower outside, he returned to Earth. It was safer to hide in Earth. Those blood locusts were very excited, very excited. They quickly pounced on the corpse general ants. It was like a huge blood cloud that swallowed the millions of corpse general ants in an instant. Immortal shook his head slightly. The corpse general ants that he had nurtured for so long were gone just like that. However, as the saying goes, a general's success is built on thousands of bones. This is a sacrifice that you must make. 2 million corpse general ants were completely enveloped by the huge blood cloud. It looked like a huge blood ball with a radius of 5 kilometers. Only then did Immortal appear 500 meters above the blood ball with a thought. In his right hand, he was already holding a crystal clear ball. The corpse general ants below had been completely devoured in an extremely short period of time. The blood locust swarm was looking for their next target. Immortal's sudden appearance made them excited again. The huge blood ball was about to expand and pounce on Immortal. However, Immortal didn't wait for the blood ball to expand. He had already let go of the crystal ball in his hand. The crystal ball fell rapidly. When the blood locusts saw the rapidly falling thing, they all pounced on it. No matter what it was, they had to try to bite it first. However, just as they were about to touch the crystal ball, a dazzling chaotic light instantly burst out from the crystal ball. The entire world seemed to be swallowed by this chaotic light. They couldn't see the sky or the earth. They couldn't see Immortal or the blood locust. The blood emperor, who had been hiding in the dark, had a look of surprise in his eyes. What was going on? Even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years, he had never seen such a situation. After a full 5 minutes, the chaotic light disappeared. The entire world was quiet. Those blood locusts that made one's scalp numb earlier had disappeared. Not a single one was left. As for the corpse general ants, they had long been devoured by the blood locust. Not a single one was left. When the blood emperor, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene, his blood-red eyes were like blood-red light bulbs. What was going on? This, impossible. Absolutely impossible. His huge blood locust swarm was destroyed by this guy's pearl. This didn't make any sense at all. However, he didn't know that anything that didn't make sense could happen to Immortal. At this moment, Immortal's mind was filled with killing points. Obtained killing points plus 100 billion, obtained killing points plus 100 billion, obtained killing points plus 100 billion, he didn't know how many plus 100 billions appeared. There were so many that Immortal was numb. After a while, the killing points finally stopped. Chapter 545. The notifications in Immortal's mind stopped. But then, another voice rang out. You can level up. Do you want to level up now? Immortal was overjoyed. He thought that it would take a long time for him to level up again. He didn't expect to level up so suddenly. He wasn't mentally prepared at all. But since he could level up, Immortal didn't hesitate. He didn't pay attention to his family member who was appearing and disappearing. Instead, with a thought, he returned to Earth. The voice in his mind said, level up. The system's voice came frowny face, this level up will take 5 minutes. Immortal didn't stop. With a thought, he accelerated time. Almost instantly, a notification came in his mind, frowny face, level up successful. The remaining kill points can be leveled up again. Do you want to level up now? Immortal showed an unexpected smile. Level up. After a moment. Level up successful. The remaining kill points can be leveled up again. Do you want to level up now? Immortal was even more delighted this time. He still chose to level up again. Soon, the system's voice came again. Level up successful. This time, it said, level up successful, instead of, level up successful. And after that, there was no more notification that there were extra kill points to level up again. Immortal was really too excited. In just a few seconds, he had leveled up several times. As for which level, he couldn't remember clearly. He could only look at his attribute interface. Name, Immortal, level 1 Super Evolved Dragon, Level 10 Long Nian Shi, ability. Click to expand, Super Evolved. Immortal was so surprised that he couldn't speak clearly. Previously, he was only a level 7 Super Evolved Dragon. In just a few seconds, he passed level 8, level 9, and level 10. In the end, he became a level 1 Super Evolved Dragon. This really made him pleasantly surprised. In addition to being surprised, he directly transformed into a dragon. At this time, his body had reached a length of 10,000 meters. It could definitely be described as covering the sky and the sun. Just his head alone was almost the size of a building. In the distance, Happy, Emma, and her son saw the huge creature that suddenly appeared in the sky. Although they knew that this was the dragon that Immortal had transformed into, they still couldn't help but feel a wave of panic in their hearts. After all, this guy was simply too big. Imagine if a 10-kilometer-long monster suddenly appeared in front of you. Would you be afraid? Not only had Immortal grown longer, but the scales on his body had also become harder. At this moment, if he stood still and allowed an evolved dragon to attack him, he would be unscathed. Furthermore, his tail had also changed. At the end of his tail, a bluish-white electric current would occasionally flow out. Although he had been able to release electricity in the past. However, the intensity of the current wasn't very high. This time, however, the intensity of the current was extremely high. He casually tried using the electric current to blast a mountain below him. Rumble, the mountain peak, which was hundreds of meters tall, collapsed under the bombardment of the electric current. Huge rocks flew in all directions. It was just like the scene when Monkey King jumped out from under the Five Elements mountain. This was because after Immortal evolved this time, the dragon vein in his body had mutated and possessed the lightning attribute. At this moment, Immortal could spit fire, ice, and also possess the true lightning attribute. A triple attribute dragon. Even in the world of the great dragons, it could be said to be one of a kind. He flew a few more laps in the sky. Emosher found that his flying speed had also become much faster. Not only that. When he flew, when he applied lightning to his entire body, his speed was even faster. The speed of the lightning during thunder was the same as the speed of Emosher's flying speed after applying the lightning. This kind of flying speed was almost equivalent to the speed of teleportation. In the future, when he really came to the world of the great dragons, if teleportation was restricted at certain times, then Emosher could still apply lightning to increase his speed. Feeling the surging power of lightning in his body, Emosher couldn't help but let out a long roar. Roar, the dragon roar that was filled with domineering, mysterious, and majestic reverberated between heaven and earth. At this moment, with the addition of the 3 attributes and the dragon Salyer, Emosher felt that it wouldn't be a problem for him to challenge a super-evolved dragon that was a few levels higher. The 3 people on the ground were shocked when they heard this dragon roar. Fortunately, they knew that this dragon was transformed by Emosher. Otherwise, they would have been scared to death. Emosher once again circled around in the air at lightning speed. When he added lightning to fly, the 3 people below couldn't see his figure at all. They could only see a blue and white lightning circling in the sky. It wasn't until more than 10 minutes later that Emosher had enough and stopped. He transformed back into his human form. The 3 people on the ground heaved a sigh of relief when they saw Emosher transform into his human form. Emosher said in his mind, "System, special event check-in." He used the corpse ants to attract the blood locusts over and kept them within a certain range. Then, he used the demon-suppressing orb to capture them all in one fell swoop. This was naturally a special event. The system's voice replied instantly, frowny face, sign-in successful. Sign-in event, slaughter of the blood locusts, sign-in reward, blood locusts 1, Emosher focused his mind on the blood locusts in the system backpack. It looked like a locust. It looked no different from the locusts on Earth. However, it was a little bigger and its entire body was blood red. Blood locusts have a strong reproductive ability. After using it, wherever it passes, not a single blade of grass will grow. The host can communicate with the blood locusts through his mind. Emosher was overjoyed. He immediately moved his mind and came to the outside world. The Blood Emperor, who was hiding in the dark, was furious after losing this large number of blood locusts. However, he didn't plan to fight Emosher head-on. After losing the blood locusts, as long as he escaped, it wouldn't be long before he formed an army of blood locusts again. At this moment, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He saw that humans suddenly appear in the air like a ghost. And a blood locust actually appeared in his hand. The Blood Emperor was a little surprised. Why didn't the blood locusts attack this human when they saw him? Surprised, he planned to wait for a while before escaping. At this moment, Emosher waved his hand. The blood locusts flew towards the forest below. A moment later, a small tree was gnawed clean. Then, a total of 11 blood locusts flew up. They flew to the next tree. Seeing this, the Blood Emperor frowned. He moved his mind, wanting to control those blood locusts. But he soon realized that he couldn't control those blood locusts at all. What's going on? Aren't these blood locusts mine? When did they betray me? Chapter 546. At this moment, the Blood Emperor's heart is filled with shock and fear. Ever since he obtained the ability to control the blood locusts, there has never been a case of the blood locusts betraying him. This fellow is truly strange. Thinking of this, his figure flashed and instantly disappeared. Emosher did not chase after him. This fellow will be finished sooner or later. Let him off for now. For Emosher, the most important thing now is to quickly develop these blood locusts. Thus, he moved his mind. The 11 blood locusts continue to gnaw on the grass and trees below. However, the newly born blood locusts need to wait until the next day to give birth. Thus, Emosher can only suppress his temper and wait. On the second day, the 10 blood locusts are able to give birth. Each blood locust gives birth to 10 blood locusts. Mosher's blood locusts instantly reach 111 blood locusts. On the third day, the newly grown blood locusts give birth to 10 blood locusts. 11 blood locusts. On the fourth day, 10,000 blood locusts. On the fifth day, 100,000 blood locusts. On the sixth day, 1,000,000 blood locusts. In just 10 days, the blood locusts have reached 10 billion blood locusts. This is much more powerful than the corpse general ants. These 10 billion corpse general ants are like a large red cloud that unceasingly passes over the ground. This time, Mosher's target is the main city of the corpse general world, Spartacus City. Within Spartacus City, King Spartacus is sitting on his seat. The civil and military ministers below him are standing on both sides. However, in their eyes, there is a trace of fear. This is because the Blood Emperor is currently standing in the middle of the hall. In the corpse general world, the Blood Emperor is synonymous with death. Thus, even these ministers feel a chill in their hearts. However, the current Blood Emperor does not seem to have the same fierce killing intent as before. On the contrary, he is like a child that has made a mistake. He hangs his head and stands there without saying a word. Spartacus coldly snorts and curses, "Trash. You can't even kill a mere human. What use do I have for you?" The Blood Emperor still does not say a word. The ministers look at Spartacus in disbelief. When did the Blood Emperor become so obedient? According to the Blood Emperor's temperament, if the king dares to speak rudely, the entire corpse general world will be bathed in blood. But isn't the current Blood Emperor a bit too cowardly? After being scolded like this by the king, not only did he not dare to talk back, he even looked timid. This was far beyond the corpse general's expectations. Seeing that he couldn't get anything out of his scolding, Spartacus finally waved his hand. "You're just a piece of trash. Why don't you go and get a bunch of blood locusts?" The Blood Emperor hurriedly nodded his head, and from the hole in his throat, a hissing sound could be heard. Then, he turned around and left quickly. The ministers wanted to say something, but they didn't dare to. Get another group of blood locusts. Didn't that mean that many cities would be massacred? But since the king had given the order, none of them dared to say anything. With the king's temper, if he had already given an order and there was no one who dared to oppose, the king would basically only have one sentence: drag him out and behead him. After the Blood Emperor left, a minister said, "Your Majesty, that human is controlling a large swarm of blood locusts and is coming towards us. It is estimated that it will take at most 10 days to reach the palace. We need to prepare early." A general said, "What are you afraid of? There are over 100 corpse ancestors in the city of Spartacus. Why would we be afraid of a group of blood locusts?" That civil minister shook his head and said, "Of course the corpse ancestors aren't afraid of the blood locusts, but the 10 million people in the city are afraid." The others wanted to say something, but Spartacus waved his wrinkled hand and stopped the ministers. He said, "We aren't afraid of him coming. What we are afraid of is him appearing and disappearing unpredictably like before. Since he dares to come, isn't he falling into our trap? Could it be that 100 corpse ancestors can't kill a mere human?" Hearing this, everyone thought for a moment and nodded slightly. It was indeed as the king said. With 100 corpse ancestors here, why would they be afraid of a human? Finally, when Mosher was getting closer and closer to the city of Spartacus, Spartacus gave the order, so the corpse ancestors are to move out and kill that human. Thus, over 100 general corpses suddenly floated out from all directions of the city of Spartacus. These general corpses were only the size of a human's head. Their skin was wrinkled. Over 100 corpse ancestors. This caused the general corpses in the city below to cry out in alarm. "Corpse ancestor! That one too! Another one has appeared! 3 have appeared here! Oh my God!" As ordinary civilians, the corpse ancestors only existed in their legends. Their ancestors had probably never seen the corpse ancestors before. They only knew that the corpse ancestors could float in the sky without using any energy. The corpse ancestors were only the size of a normal human. The corpse ancestors' skin was wrinkled. But now, not only did they see the corpse ancestors, but they also saw so many of them at once. This made them feel that it was a little unreal. With so many corpse ancestors, that human who dares to invade our general corpse's world will definitely be taken down. Is there a need to say? He will definitely be easily destroyed. That human is really too despicable. He controlled the blood locusts and massacred so many of our cities. Now, there are finally general corpses to restrain him. Since the first day the blood locusts appeared, countless general corpses' cities have been massacred. This human should be sent to hell. Listening to these general corpses, they were also blaming Immortal for the cities massacred by the Blood Emperor. Finally, Immortal saw the main city of the general corpses' world in the distance, Spartacus City. He was slightly excited in his heart. He had come to the general corpses' world for so long. Didn't he want to destroy the general corpses' main city? Once the main city was destroyed and the king died, the general corpses' world would be leaderless. At that time, he would use the blood locusts to wash the entire general corpses' world with blood. This was Immortal's plan. Immortal's blood-red wings flapped slightly as he floated in the air. Below was a large group of blood locusts. When the blood locusts landed on the ground, the entire ground seemed to have turned blood-red. It formed a blood locust's belt about 5 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide. Immortal's gaze fell on the 100 corpse ancestors. 100 corpse ancestors? Then let's deal with them all at once. At this moment, those corpse ancestors were all staring at the human 500 meters away with sharp eyes. And in the city below, those general corpses roared, "Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" In the palace, Spartacus raised his eyebrows slightly. He could feel that this human was very strong. But, this was just the beginning. Ever since he became this damned king, he hadn't played for a long time. Today, he would play to his heart's content. The sky was covered with dark clouds. A great battle was about to break out. Chapter 547. There was a poem, dark clouds pressed down on the city, threatening to destroy it. It was referring to the current Spartacus city, the main city of the entire General Corps world. Because the General Corps world's body was more than 600 times that of a human, the main city of the General Corps world had to be much larger than the large cities on Earth to accommodate more than 15 million General Corps world. The main city of the General Corps world was more than 10 times larger than the entire Huaxia on Earth. At this moment, the sky was covered in dark clouds. The rolling clouds were extremely low, as if they were going to press down on the entire main city of Spartacus. More than 100 corpse ancestors floated above the main city. They looked at the human with sharp gazes. On the ground, the General Corps generals roared one after another, "Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!" The General Corps generals in the distance couldn't see the situation here, but they heard the General Corps generals shouting, "Kill him!" They also began to shout in unison. Thus, gradually, the 15 million General Corps generals in the main city all raised their right arms and shouted, "Kill him," in unison. General Corps generals were much louder than humans to begin with. The voice of 15 million General Corpses, just how shocking was that? The sound wave pressed down on Immortal, as if it was going to crush Immortal. In the distant palace, Spartacus was standing high up, looking at the sky here. There was even a strange smile on his face. At this moment, a corpse ancestor suddenly moved. He disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already behind Immortal. A bone blade condensed in his right arm and stabbed toward Immortal's back. However, Immortal didn't even turn his head. His left arm gently stretched backward, and his 5 fingers formed a claw. It was extremely fast, and it arrived first. He instantly grabbed the corpse ancestor's head. The next moment, crackle, blue-white lightning flashed on Emoshir's left hand. The corpse ancestor's body was also instantly surrounded by lightning. The next moment, Emoshir's left hand let go. The corpse ancestor's body fell from the sky. There was even a trail of black smoke behind him. Bang! After landing, there was no aura at all. It had already turned into a charred body. The corpse generals who were shouting, "Kill him," suddenly paused. When the corpse generals in the distance heard that they had stopped shouting, their voices abruptly stopped as well. Then, the voices of the distant general corpses disappeared. It was like a power outage. At first, there was darkness in the center, and then the darkness slowly radiated to the surroundings. The current Jiang Shi was in such a situation. For a moment, the entire kingdom of generals' corpses was dead silent. All of the corpse generals below looked at the human in the sky in disbelief. How was this possible? In their knowledge, the corpse ancestor was an extremely formidable existence. Immortality, indestructibility. Now that he was fighting with this human, he couldn't even withstand a single blow and fell to the ground. In the beginning, they still had a trace of hope, waiting for corpse ancestor to revive. After all, every single corpse progenitor possessed an extremely powerful regenerative ability. They wouldn't die even if their heads fell off. However, after waiting for over a minute, the corpse ancestor didn't come back to life. Black smoke was still rising from the corpse. He was already dead. Completely dead. All the general corpses widened their eyes. Corpse ancestor is dead. How was this possible? Corpse ancestor really is dead. And what they found most unbelievable was that he was actually killed in a single blow by this human. In the distant palace, the king was also shocked when he saw this scene. This was truly beyond his expectations. The ministers beside him said in horror. "Your Majesty, the king's shock quickly disappeared. Instead, he revealed a strange smile. Bullying the many with the few, interesting." At this moment, the corpse ancestors in the sky all had a slight change in expression. Soon, a total of 10 corpse ancestors instantly appeared around Emoshi. The bone spurs, bone blades, and bone claws on their bodies were imbued with energy as they stabbed at Emoshi. Ding, 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 ding. Their bone spurs, bone blades, and bone claws had all pierced Emoshi. However, black scales had already appeared on the surface of Emoshi's body. Although their sharp weapons were imbued with energy, they were unable to penetrate the surface of Emoshi's body. At the same time, lightning coiled around Emoshi's body. Zap, 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 the 10 Earth generals' bodies were instantly crawled up by the lightning. It was as if they were all in vibrating mode. Zap, 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 after a few seconds, the lightning on Emoshi's body disappeared. And these corpse ancestors, who were considered godlike existences in the world of corpse generals, fell from the sky one after another. 10 long trails of black smoke were left behind. All the corpse generals were dumbfounded. Even 10 corpse generals were no match for this guy. How strong was this guy? At this moment, in the sky to the right, a large blood cloud flew over. Emoshi saw this large blood cloud and sneered. It was delivering food to his blood locusts. With a thought. On the ground, the large group of blood locusts flew towards the large blood cloud in the sky. From the size, it could be seen that Emoshi's large blood cloud was more than 10 times the size of the large blood cloud in the sky. In a moment, the large blood cloud in the sky was completely devoured. Only the Blood Emperor was left floating in the air. Emoshi shook his head slightly. This Blood Emperor was strong, but he seemed to be a little stupid. He clearly knew that he had less blood locusts than him, but he still insisted on delivering them. In the next moment, with a thought, he appeared in front of the Blood Emperor. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the Blood Emperor's neck. Previously, when Emoshi was only a rank 6 or 7 evolved giant dragon, he was able to fight evenly with corpse ancestors. Now that he had evolved into a super-evolved giant dragon, if he were to meet a level 1 corpse ancestor, wouldn't it be a one-sided slaughter? Swish swish swish, dozens of snake-like lightning instantly climbed up the Blood Emperor's body. Then, Emosure threw him to the side. The Blood Emperor flew far away. After flying for more than 10 kilometers, he drew a perfect arc. With a plop, he smashed into the palace and landed right in front of Spartacus. The faces of the officials were all pale. The Blood Emperor was killed. And in front of this human, the Blood Emperor was actually unable to withstand even one move. It must be known that in their knowledge, the Blood Emperor was synonymous with demon and fiend. But now, he was killed by a human in one move. How strong is this human? Very quickly, Emosure gave them the answer. Facing the 100 over corpse ancestors, Emosure was too lazy to kill them one by one. The sound of bones breaking came from his body. Kacha, kacha, his body was rapidly changing. The clothes on his body were torn apart. Black scales appeared all over his body. His hands turned into claws. His legs turned into claws. A long tail grew out from his back. His head turned into a sinister dragon head with barbs. Chapter 548. At this moment, Emosure had transformed into a 10,000-meter-long dragon. 10,000 meters, what kind of concept was that? It was 10 kilometers long. In other words, even if a scale fell from his body, it would be able to crush dozens of ordinary people to death. A 10,000-meter-long dragon could almost be described as covering the sky and the sun. On the ground, the general corpses were all dumbfounded. This is a giant dragon. Heavens, there really is a giant dragon. In the world of general corpses, there had once been worship of giant dragons. Ever since Corpse Ancestor appeared, the general corpses gradually stopped worshipping giant dragons. However, in the distant rock paintings and the general corpses' oral legends, there was still the existence of giant dragons. However, it had been tens of thousands of years since a giant dragon had appeared. The general corpses treated giant dragons as just a legend. None of the general corpses felt that giant dragons really existed. However, now, a living giant dragon had appeared in front of them. How could they not be shocked? Emosure's blood-red eyes were 100 meters in diameter. As he looked around, His Majesty was born. Many general corpses couldn't help but want to kneel on the ground and worship him. It was because his mountain-like body and his majestic gaze were too oppressive. The hearts of the 100-plus corpse ancestors that were still floating in the sky were all greatly shaken at this moment. There really was a giant dragon. What was even more terrifying was that this giant dragon seemed to be their enemy. It was over. In the distant palace, Spartacus looked at the giant dragon that occupied almost half of the sky. However, his eyes were full of spirit. At this moment, Emosure's giant tail, which was almost 4,000 meters long, suddenly stretched out and pointed at a corpse ancestor in the sky. His entire body was flickering with blue-white lightning. The lightning seemed to have been compressed. At first, his entire body was flickering. Then, it quickly gathered at his tail. Finally, it gathered at the tip of his tail. At this moment, the tip of his tail looked like a shining ball of light. However, what was even more gorgeous than the ball of light was the ball of light condensed from lightning at the tip of Emosure's tail, which had a diameter of 500 meters. Moreover, blue-white lightning was constantly spreading around this ball of lightning. It looked extremely unstable. In the next moment, this extremely unstable ball of lightning flew toward a corpse ancestor. The corpse ancestor hurriedly intended to flee when he saw this. However, how could the speed of the lightning ball be something that a corpse ancestor could avoid? Whoosh, the corpse ancestor was instantly struck by the lightning ball. His entire body was shrouded in a dazzling blue-white light. One could even see the shape of corpse ancestor's bones when he was electrocuted. In the next moment, the other corpse ancestors didn't even have the time to react. Above the lightning ball, countless blue-white lightning bolts instantly extended in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped over 100 corpse ancestors. Every corpse ancestor was covered in blue-white lightning. It was as if there were hundreds of little blue and white snakes crawling on it. Every corpse ancestor was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. After half a minute, the lightning finally disappeared. 100 corpse progenitors fell from the sky in unison, dragging thick black smoke behind them. It was as if hundreds of meteorites were falling to the ground. When they landed, crash. 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 Every single corpse ancestor had been reduced to charred pieces that covered the ground. All the general corpses were dumbfounded. The corpse ancestors were godlike existences in their eyes before. They were immortal, and indestructible. But now, in front of this giant dragon, with just one strike, they were all electrocuted into pieces on the ground. There was no sign of self-healing at all. Emosher's huge head shook slightly. The corpse ancestors' fighting style had indeed inspired him to a certain extent. But when the energy had reached a level where it could crush the opponent, it didn't matter what fighting style you used. I'm just a crack. In the distance, in the palace, Spartacus's eyes were also filled with extreme shock when he saw this. This giant dragon was simply too powerful, so powerful that it was far beyond his expectations. The minister beside him advised, "Your Majesty, let's quickly go underground and hide. This giant dragon is too strong, too strong." However, Spartacus shook off the minister. He cursed, "I haven't found an opponent for tens of thousands of years. Do you know how lonely it is to be invincible? Watch me fight this guy for 300 rounds. At this point, Spartacus teleported into the sky. In the next moment, his body also rapidly changed. Crack, crack. His bones seemed to be bursting out of his flesh. The muffled sound of bones breaking constantly came from his body. Amidst these muffled sounds, his body was rapidly growing, and at the same time, it was also rapidly changing shape. The color of his body was also rapidly changing. Generally speaking, Emosher wouldn't give the other party a chance to change into their final form. He would usually kill the other party in one strike while they were in the process of changing. This was the so-called disregard of martial ethics. But at this time, he also wanted to see how strong he was after evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon. So he watched this guy constantly change from the side. About a minute later, Spartacus finally completed his transformation. At this time, Spartacus was 10,000 meters long, and his entire body was blood red. He was born with 6 legs. The 2 legs at the back were very well developed. There was a pair of long blood-red antennae on his head. There was also a pair of blood-red wings on his back. He had actually turned into a 10,000-meter-long blood-red grasshopper. This was the so-called locust. At this moment, all the ministers in the palace recognized him. Blood. Blood Emperor. Oh my God, how did His Majesty become the Blood Emperor? This is impossible, there must be a mistake. In the legends, the real blood locust wasn't in the form of the corpse ancestor. Instead, it was a huge blood-red grasshopper. It led countless blood-red locusts, and wherever it went, not even a blade of grass was left. And right now, wasn't this the legendary Blood Emperor? In their shock, some people thought of the Blood Emperor that had died before. They quickly went to check the Blood Emperor's corpse. After checking, they found that there was a black birthmark on the Blood Emperor's waist. King. This is the real king. Oh, everyone suddenly understood. So, tens of thousands of years ago, when the king gave the order to exterminate the blood locust had already switched him with the king. No wonder the Blood Emperor they caught had a face full of pustules, and they couldn't see his face clearly. Then, for the past 10,000 years, the Blood Emperor had been ruling them. No wonder His Majesty's personality had changed so much in the past 10,000 years. Previously, these ministers all felt that it was strange, but none of them dared to say it out loud. What a blood emperor, he actually deceived the entire General Corpse world for 10,000 years. Chapter 549. At this moment, all of the Corpse generals had discovered an unbelievable and incomparably terrifying truth. Their king was actually the Blood Emperor. The real Blood Emperor. As for their real majesty, he had been swapped out. His face was disfigured and his voice was ruined. He had been locked up in prison for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, the Blood Emperor was facing Immortal, who was about the same size as him. The blood-red wings on his back were constantly rubbing against each other, making a strange sound. Hiss, 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 the pair of huge antennae on his head were constantly shaking. The pair of sickle-shaped forelegs were constantly waving left and right. It looked extremely terrifying. In the next moment, the pair of well-developed hind legs fiercely stomped on the ground. Then, it pounced towards Immortal, who was in the sky. Immortal sneered. Flapping its wings in the sky, it didn't try to dodge, nor did it respond. He wanted to see how strong his body was after evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon. In the next moment, crackle, an ear-piercing sound rang out. The Blood Emperor's sickle-shaped forelegs slashed across Immortal's body. However, it was unable to even scratch his scales. It only brought about a burst of sparks. From the ground, one could see that Immortal's body was emitting a string of fiery red lightning. When the Blood Emperor saw this, he was secretly shocked. One must know that he did not just use his forelegs to cut the giant dragon's body. Instead, he added a large amount of energy to his forelegs. However, it did not even leave a mark on this fellow's body. This fellow's scales were too hard. Alright, since its scales are so tough, I'll just tear its wings apart first. When he thought of this, his pair of thick hind legs directly kicked towards Immortal's right wing. Rip, this time, it directly tore apart Immortal's tattered wings. However, not only did Immortal not fall, he was still floating in the sky. He even looked at the Blood Emperor with a playful gaze. The Blood Emperor was even more shocked. No effect. There was indeed no effect. This Blood Emperor was really stupid. If Immortal really relied on his wings to fly, would his wings, which were like tattered bedsheets, be able to support his huge body? His flight was now powered by energy. The Blood Emperor attacked Immortal several times but none of them had any effect. Terrified, he wanted to turn around and flee. However, Immortal shook his head. He spoke in human language. I'm very disappointed in you. The Blood Emperor turned his head and looked at the dragon in the sky. He didn't understand what the dragon was saying, but he knew that the dragon was about to get angry. Thus, his strong hind legs kicked violently, intending to escape. However, would Immortal let him escape? What a joke. Immortal's 4-kilometer-long tail smashed down. The giant tail moved, and the dark clouds in the sky were immediately split into two. Woo! The huge tail in the air brought about a loud sound of breaking through the air. Like the golden cudgel of a great sage, it smashed towards the Blood Emperor. Bang! There was no suspense. It smashed onto the Blood Emperor's body. Rumble! This tail smashed the Blood Emperor to the ground. On the ground, a 20-kilometer-long and 5-kilometer-wide crack appeared. Countless houses and trees fell into the huge crack. As for the Blood Emperor, he was smashed into two at the waist. It must be known that Immortal did not use any ability when smashing the Blood Emperor. It was purely physical strength. Just his physical strength alone was so tyrannical. Could it be that this was the strength of a dragon after reaching super evolution? Actually, Immortal did not know that although a dragon's physical strength was strong, it was not to this extent. The reason why Immortal's physical strength was so strong was because he was a devil dragon. Since ancient times, the devil dragons that appeared in the 10,000 dragon realm were twice as strong as normal dragons. Moreover, he was a 4-winged devil dragon. His physical strength was 10 times stronger than that of an ordinary giant dragon. Furthermore, the dragon vein had mutated, allowing him to possess the lightning attribute. With the addition of the ice, fire, and lightning attributes, his physical strength was 50 times that of a dragon of the same rank. This was Immortal's true strength now. If he did not use energy and purely relied on his physical strength to fight, Immortal could beat any dragon of the same rank. He could even rely on his physical strength to challenge a rank 2 or even rank 3 super evolved dragon. If he added the ice, fire, and lightning attributes, as well as the dragon-slaying saber and the dragon-binding rope, he should have no problem challenging a rank 5 super evolved dragon. Therefore, this Blood Emperor was actually arrogant enough to challenge a dragon. Immortal really couldn't figure out who had given this guy such courage. Liang Jingru. Yes, Liang Jingru's image in Immortal's mind was already very vague. That was already the memory of his previous life. After transmigrating to Earth, he had experienced so much all the way to the flaming beginning continent. He had already forgotten most of the things that happened in his previous life. After a while, Immortal came back to his senses and realized that he had been distracted. He could not help but shake his head. He said to the guy who had been smashed in half, "I'm sorry, I actually got distracted. It seems that I didn't respect you. I didn't do it on purpose." Although the Blood Emperor did not understand Immortal's words, he actually understood what Immortal meant. At this moment, he felt a great humiliation. He was the dignified Blood Emperor who had suppressed the ancient times. Now that he was being humiliated by this dragon in such a way, he was extremely angry. Previously, he had thought that his strength had already reached a level where no ancient corpses could surpass him in the future. He did not even put the legendary dragons in his eyes. But he never thought that in front of a real dragon, he would be so weak. At this moment, Immortal did not waste any more words with him. With a thought. Crackle, a bolt of lightning shot out from his tail. Crackle crackle crackle, the two parts of the Blood Emperor's body were instantly covered with lightning. Very quickly, they were electrocuted into two charcoal. Immortal's tail flapped. Walala, the two charcoal corpses turned into black powder on the ground and disappeared with the wind. This was the current Immortal. A real super-evolved dragon. Even in the great dragon world, he could be considered a powerhouse. Not to mention in a mere general corpse world. Seeing that this dragon had killed the Blood Emperor, all the general corpse generals did not know whether to be happy or afraid. Immortal did not hold back. He flapped his wings and circled around in the sky. Then he swooped down from the sky. A gust of cold air shot out from his mouth. Crack, crack, the area within 100 kilometers was instantly frozen. Boom, another flame shot out. The area within 100 kilometers was instantly turned into a sea of fire. No wonder the dragon race was called the strongest race in the universe. How could an ordinary race withstand such a battle power? Since they were the so-called Zergs, they were nothing but trash in front of a real super-evolved giant dragon. Chapter 550. Immortal transformed into a four-winged demonic dragon. With a swing of his long tail, a thick bolt of lightning shot out. When he opened his mouth, the area within 100-mile radius would either turn into a world of ice or a sea of fire. What about the general corpse's close combat? What about wasting energy? In the face of absolute power, it was not worth mentioning at all. Immortal was like the evil dragon in Western legends. He kept circling in the sky, bringing disaster to the general corpse below. The general corpses below constantly let out cries of agony, screams, and sobs. However, Immortal didn't show any mercy. When the general corpse invaded the flaming continent, they caused thousands of people to lose their homes. They caused thousands of families on the flaming continent to be separated. They turned thousands of people on the flaming continent into skeletons. Did they ever have the slightest bit of pity? The reason was that they did not treat the humans on the flaming continent as humans. Why should he treat them as humans? Emosure had already turned the area within a 1,000-mile radius into a world of ice or a sea of fire. Although the General Corpse's self-healing ability was strong, it seemed to have disappeared in the face of any attack from a giant dragon. At this moment, Emosure was floating high in the sky. When his 10-kilometer-long body spread its wings, it was like a large dark cloud that covered the sky. He looked at the sea of fire and the world of ice below, then looked at his mind. After killing so many General Corps, there was no notification in his mind that his kill points had increased. System, where are my kill points? Emosure asked. The system's voice quickly sounded. After evolving into a super-evolved giant dragon, the kill point system has been removed. If you want to evolve, you can only hunt giant dragons. Giant Dragon Hunt, 0 out of 10. Seeing this, Emosure shook his head helplessly. He only needed to kill 10 giant dragons to evolve again. Emosure asked again. Are there any requirements for the level of the Giant Dragon Hunt? The difference in quality between killing a normal giant dragon and a super-evolved giant dragon is so big. Can't it be the same in quantity? The system's voice sounded again. The giant dragons here are normal giant dragons. 1 evolved giant dragon equals 10 normal giant dragons. 1 super-evolved giant dragon equals 10 evolved giant dragons equals 100 normal giant dragons. Emosure nodded and said, in that case, as long as I kill an evolved dragon, I can level up again. The system replied, yes. After understanding this, Emosure did not continue to kill these corpse generals. Instead, he gave an order to the Blood Locust. Slaughter the entire General Corpse world. As soon as he gave the order, the Blood Locusts on the ground immediately flew toward the corpses of Spartacus like a large patch of red rain. 3 days later, Spartacus' 15 million corpses all returned to heaven. No one was spared. At the same time, in these 3 days, the number of blood locusts had increased by 1,000 times. Emosure no longer had any attachment to this world of general corpses. At this time, the number of his blood locusts was already God knows how many trillions. In short, as long as they flew up at the same time, they would be able to cover most of the sky. Emosure selected half of the blood locusts and put them into his Earth space. The remaining blood locusts were left in this world of general corpses. He gave these blood locusts an order through his mind. Destroy all the general corpses in this world. He watched as the blood locusts flew in the direction of the next city. Emosure retracted his gaze from the red clouds in the sky. Then, with a thought, he appeared tens of thousands of kilometers away. Now that he had become a super-evolved giant dragon, his teleportation distance had increased by 10 times. This did not mean that his dragon's shadow steps had already reached the perfection stage. Instead, it was because his own strength had increased that the dragon's shadow steps distance had greatly increased. As for perfection, he still had not found the trick to it. He did not know when his dragon's shadow step would truly reach perfection. With Emosure's current speed, it only took him half an hour to reach the cave entrance where he had first come to this world. At this time, the cave entrance was already covered in weeds. Clearly, no general corpses had entered or left this place for a long time. Emosure entered the cave and quickly walked forward according to the path in his memory. Half an hour later, he had already returned to the Flaming Land. He immediately returned to Hunting Island No. 1. When the people on the island saw that Emosure had returned, they were all very excited. Emosure had not been seen for a few months, and they did not know where Emosure had gone. Therefore, in these few months, they had always felt that they did not have a backbone. Especially when the general corpses were so chaotic outside, they were all worried that the general corpses would attack Hunting Island No. 1. Although Mr. Emo had given them many demon-suppressing orbs, when Mr. Emo was not here, they always felt that they lacked a leader. Now, Mr. Emo was finally back. After Emosure returned, he took Happy and the other two out of Earth space. The three of them had not returned to Hunting Island No. 1 for a long time. If the first Hunting Island was their home, then they still had some feelings for it. When the people saw that the three of them had returned, they were very enthusiastic. Emosure watched as Happy and the people on Hunting Island number 1 chatted and laughed. Of course, Happy was using sign language. As soon as she returned to the real world, she could not speak. Emosure also had a smile on his face. It was still the same sentence. When Emosure saw that Happy was happy, he was also very happy. Next, Emosure learned about the current situation of the entire Flaming Land through Guojutao. It could be said that the situation of the Flaming Land was very grim. Many of the previous bases had already been destroyed. If there were only 600 bases that were still holding on. It was estimated that in another half a year, these 600 bases would not be able to hold on. Emosure did not say anything else. Instead, he used his mind to release the blood locusts. Tens of thousands of blood locusts made the people on Hunting Island number 1 feel their scalps go numb and a chill run down their spines. The large number of blood locusts turned into a blood cloud and flew out of Hunting Island number 1. Guojutao, who was somewhat feminine, asked. Mr. Mo, this is, Emosure replied, blood locusts. They can take care of the general corpses. Guojuhu was very surprised. The general corpses were extremely strong. Coupled with their abnormal self-healing ability, even a grand desolate master could not kill them. Now, they could just send a swarm of locusts. Emosure did not answer. He said to Guojutao. You must be tired when I wasn't around. Go and rest for a few days. Guojutao said, but those blood-red locusts, if we don't do anything, will they? Emosure still did not answer on the live broadcast. We'll know in a few days. Guojutao had no choice but to nod and say, yes, Mr. Mo. Chapter 551. Emosure sent out the blood locusts to clean up the general corpses. As for himself, he had nothing to do these days. Every day, he would take a walk with Happy, watch the sea, and enjoy the breeze. Emma brought her son and busied herself on Hunting Island 1 every day. She was teaching her son some essential life skills. For example, how to grow vegetables, how to wash clothes, how to cook. This way, if she had to leave her son in the future, her son would be able to take care of himself. What surprised Emosure was that after Emma's son returned to the real world, although his intelligence had not fully recovered, he was much better than before. Could it be that staying on Earth for a long time could also affect the real world? This did not make sense. Emosure could not help but think of Happy. Happy had stayed on Earth for so long. Why was he still unable to speak after returning to the real world? Was this the punishment of the heavens for the oracle? However, Emosure had already made up his mind. Even if he had to travel to every corner of the universe, he had to find a way to make Happy speak. If the heavens did not allow the oracle to speak, then he would go against the heavens. Flaming Beginning Continent, Bing Province. Bing Province Base. Bing Province was the province with the most general corpses. In the beginning, there were more than 20 bases in Bing Province. But now, there was only one base left. The reason the general corpses did not attack this base first was not because the defense of this base was good. It was because this base did not have as many people as the other bases. The general corpses would usually choose a place with more people to attack. There were only 20,000 people in this base. It was far from the other bases. Therefore, even the general corpses looked down on this base. But now, the other 20 or so bases in Bing Province were all gone. Only this one seedling was left. Therefore, the general corpses from all directions were surging towards this base. The leader of the base was now called the base commander. He was a young man with a fair complexion and a refined appearance. At this moment, he was continuously checking the reports that had just been sent. A large number of general corpses appeared 50 kilometers to the east. They will arrive at the base in at most half an hour. A large number of general corpses appeared southwest of the base. They will arrive at the base in 40 minutes. General corpses appeared north of the base. They will arrive at the base in 28 minutes. Looking at the reports, the base commander felt a headache. In the base, other than him being a Grand Desolate Master, there were no other Grand Desolate Masters. The number of general corpses that came this time was probably around 100,000. How could he deal with so many general corpses? He frowned. How could 20,000 humans resist 100,000 general corpses? There was simply no chance of survival. Therefore, what he was considering now was not to tell the people this news first and let them eventually die in the battle. Or should I tell them the news now so that they can bid farewell to their family and friends for the last time? This was a difficult choice for him. It seemed cruel to let them know the truth. There was no difference between living and seeking death. How could hatred be discussed? But if he didn't tell them the truth, they might not even be able to see their relatives and friends for the last time. After pondering for a long time, he finally decided to tell them the truth. They had the right to know the truth. Although they should have expected this day to come, the truth was too cruel for them. However, they had the right to know the truth. Thinking to this point, Elder G muttered to himself for a long time, before using the loudspeaker in the base to broadcast to the entire base. Everyone in the base, I am Elder G. When the people in the base heard Elder G's voice, they knew that the situation was not good. Under normal circumstances, Elder G would not personally broadcast. It was only during special events or major events that the Foundation chief would make the announcement. But today, when Elder G broadcast, his voice was clearly much deeper than usual. Very clearly, the final moment that they had long anticipated had come. Elder G's voice continued, in the past year, the general corpses have descended, bringing disaster and death to them. However, after going through an extremely arduous battle, we have finally established a base. Although our base is not the largest, nor does it have the strongest defensive measures. However, in the past year, we have withstood over 50 general corpses attacks of various sizes. Elder G said many things. Finally, he said, but today, I have to tell everyone the truth. A large number of general corpses have arrived from all 4 directions of our base. I estimate that the total number is over 100,000. And with our current defenses, we are unable to defend against so many general corpses. So, take advantage of this final opportunity to say goodbye to your parents, wives and friends. I am very grateful for everyone's efforts in the past year. Now, it is time for us to reunite with our families and friends. After saying that, Elder G was silent for a moment. Finally, he turned off the loudspeaker. When a child heard this, he burst into tears. He turned his head and threw himself into his mother's embrace. Mommy, are we going to die? Although his mother was in extreme pain, she shook her head. No, we are not going to die. We are only going to find Daddy. An old man looked at the azure sky with his eyes filled with vicissitudes of life. He said sorrowfully, die. In a world like this, the early death, the early reincarnation. A young couple hugged each other. This would be the last time they would see each other. Neither of them was willing to let go. This was truly a case of strangers courting death. Half an hour later, Bingzhou City was surrounded by corpses from all directions. Each general corpse was more than 300 meters tall. Humans seemed so insignificant in front of them. They were constantly roaring like tens of thousands of wild beasts. Tens of thousands of general corpses were charging towards them, causing the ground to rumble and shake. Elder G condensed a pair of wings behind his back and floated in the air. He looked at the humans below him. In the next few minutes, these humans would be annihilated. However, he was unable to do anything. He hated himself for being a mere level 1 Grand Desolate Master. If only he had worked harder back then and leveled up a few more times. Perhaps he would have a solution now. When the pair of fathers below saw Elder G flying up, they hurriedly lifted up their 3-year-old child. Elder G. I beg you, please save our child. Elder G's heart softened. He flew down again and held the child in his embrace. Then, he flew up into the sky again. At this moment, the other parents who saw this scene also regained their senses. Elder G, please save my child. Elder G, I beg you. We can die, but our child is only 2.5 years old. In an instant, over 100 pairs of parents lifted their children high into the air. Elder G's face was filled with pain. He could only fly with 4 children at most. How was he supposed to choose? No matter who he chose, it would be unfair to the other children. Chapter 552. Elder G's face was filled with pain. Who should he bring with him when there were so many children? It would be unfair to the other children if he brought anyone. Just as he was hesitating, through the broken city walls, he saw billowing smoke and dust in the distance. With his vision as a grand desolate master, he saw a row of 300-meter-tall general corpses at the front of the cloud of dust. A moment later, the cloud of dust rose from all directions. These general corpses were like wolves that had been starved for 3 days. They madly charged at the base. The rest of the humans also realized this, and their eyes were filled with despair. At the same time, a pair of parents knelt down with their children. Elder G, I beg you. Save the child. The other parents also knelt down. Elder G, please save the child. He's only 3 years old. Elder G, we can die now, but the child is still young. I beg you, please save him. Elder G's face was troubled. As a grand desolate master, he was very confident before the apocalypse. There seemed to be nothing he couldn't do in the entire Flaming Dawn continent. But after the apocalypse, he felt so powerless. He couldn't stop the apocalypse from coming. Many times, he could only watch as many humans died under the claws of the general corpses. He couldn't do anything. But now, there were so many people and so many children in need of saving. How many could he save? He couldn't even choose which child to save. He felt like he was a useless piece of trash. Soon, the general corpses were less than a kilometer away from the base's walls. Everyone saw the 300-meter-tall general corpses. Not only were the general corpses stronger than them individually, but they also outnumbered them. Everyone's eyes were filled with tears of fear and despair. Finally, this day had come. An old man looked at the setting sun in the sky. What a beautiful sunset. Although he had lived for more than 200 years, he had seen countless sunsets. But this time, it was the most beautiful one he had ever seen. He really couldn't bear to part with such a sunset. At this moment, an 8-year-old child suddenly pointed to the eastern sky and said, "That's right. Father, what's that?" The child's father was also filled with despair. He originally wasn't in the mood to watch. This child loved to ask all sorts of questions since he was young. Sometimes, his questions could annoy people to death. But at this moment, he remembered that this was the last time he would answer the child's question. Thus, he turned his head and looked seriously at the eastern sky in the direction the child was pointing. With a single glance, a huge wave of panic rose in his heart. That was because it was actually a huge blood cloud. The huge blood cloud took up half of the sky. It quickly enveloped the base. Is this the end of the world? Not only did the corpse appear, but such a strange phenomenon also appeared. At this moment, the others also noticed the blood cloud. Everyone's heart was filled with panic. This blood cloud was too strange, and its speed was too fast. In the sky, Foundation Chief's face was filled with shock. With his eyesight, he was able to see the truth of the blood cloud. This was not a blood cloud. Instead, it was a blood-red locust that he had never seen or heard of in his 600 to 700 years of life. It seemed that the end of the world was coming. The heavens didn't give the people of the flame-beginning continent any chance of survival. Even such a strange thing had appeared. Everyone in the base was in fear and despair. The blood cloud was getting closer and closer. Everyone also realized that this was not a blood cloud, but a blood-red locust. Each blood-red locust was the size of a palm. At this moment, they still didn't know that each blood-red locust was equivalent to a grand desolate master. These blood locusts quickly descended and pounced on the corpse generals at the front. Ah! Roar! Roar! Those corpse generals immediately let out a series of shrill screams. One could see that the corpse generals at the front had turned into skeletons that were more than 300 meters tall in just a few seconds. Then, they fell forward with a loud crash. A corpse general's skull was smashed into a gap in the wall. Everyone looked at this huge skull. There was no trace of flesh on it. They were all extremely shocked. Then, they turned to look at the corpse generals. Under the attack of the blood locusts, those corpse generals were turning into skeletons and falling to the ground. All the humans were extremely shocked. These blood locusts weren't coming for the humans. Foundation Chief hurriedly shouted to all the humans in his shock, "Go back inside. Go back to the house, everyone, go back to the house." Previously, they didn't hide in the houses because the houses couldn't stop the 300-meter-tall corpse generals. But now, they were hiding in the houses because the blood locusts were only the size of a palm. Hiding in the houses should be able to stop these blood locusts. Although now, it seemed that they were coming for the corpse generals. But who knew if they would attack humans after eating these general corpses? After waiting for the others to hide in the houses, Foundation Chief flapped his energy wings and floated in the air. He saw that the corpse generals surrounding the base were being quickly devoured by the blood locusts. The corpse generals were clearly panicking. They had never seen such a scene before. One by one, they were screaming and running away. This made him feel much better. He finally saw the demon-like corpse generals letting out such screams. In a short half an hour, the 100,000 corpse generals had turned into 100,000 skeletons that were scattered all over the ground. As far as the eye could see, the ground around the base was deathly pale. Foundation Chief was extremely shocked. The self-healing ability of these corpse generals was truly abnormal. With his ability, it was difficult to even kill a corpse general. But now, these blood locusts had easily destroyed 100,000 corpse generals. It was truly shocking. But at the same time, Foundation Chief's heart tightened. Would these blood locusts attack the base? Just now, he thought that hiding in the houses might be useful. But when he saw the terrifying scene of the blood locusts attacking, even the hard skin of the corpse generals couldn't stop them. It was a fool's dream to think that the houses could stop the blood locusts' attack. So, Foundation Chief's right arm had already formed a genetic martial art. Although he couldn't kill such a large number of blood locusts before his energy ran out, he would kill as many as he could. That was all he could do for the base. However, out of his expectations. After the blood locusts finished devouring the corpse generals, they didn't attack the base. They didn't even pay attention to him, who was only 100 meters away from the blood locusts. Instead, they flapped their wings and turned into a blood cloud again, flying into the distance. And that direction was the direction of base 1033, which had already been occupied by the corpse generals. Chapter 553. Looking at the blood locusts in the distance, Chief G finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although he didn't know what would happen tomorrow, at least the humans in the base were safe today. And all of this was thanks to those terrifying blood locusts. Everyone, come out. The blood locusts have devoured all the general corpses. Everyone is safe for now. Chief G said. When the people in the base heard this, they were all in disbelief at first, then they were pleasantly surprised. They didn't have to die. At least they didn't have to die today. The sudden appearance of hope from extreme despair made them cry tears of joy. Those parents hugged their children tightly. They didn't have to be separated from their children, and they didn't have to die. How could they not be excited? The old man looked at the sunset from the window. This sunset was really King beautiful. Chief G hesitated for a moment, then said to his assistant, "Clean up the battlefield. I'll go see what's going on with those blood locusts." The assistant nodded. "Chief G, you have to be careful." Chief G nodded. Then the energy wings on his back flapped, and he chased after the blood locusts in the distance. He followed the blood locusts and flew to the next city. The blood locusts would not land when they encountered survivors on the ground. They would only land when they encountered general corpses and devour them. Soon, they arrived at another base that had already been occupied by general corpses. The blood locusts landed again. In just over 20 minutes, all the general corpses in this base had been devoured by the blood locusts. What surprised him even more was that after devouring these general corpses, these blood locusts gave birth to 10 more blood locusts. Thus, the number of blood locusts instantly increased by 10 times. Then they flew to the next city with the most general corpses. Chief G followed them all the way and flew past 3 bases. He already understood that these blood locusts were here specifically for general corpses. He was very puzzled. Why would such a large group of blood locusts suddenly appear? And they were only devouring general corpses? This was really strange. At the same time, similar scenes were happening in many places on the continent. The few remaining humans in this world all knew that strange creatures like blood locusts had appeared on the continent, and they specialized in devouring general corpses. This gave them hope. Is the heavens finally going to collect these general corpses? Thank the heavens, the general corpse is finally going to be removed. Thank the heavens, thank the heavens. Almost everyone was thinking the same thing. However, some of the more knowledgeable people had other thoughts. These locusts moved in unison and only devoured general corpses, ignoring the humans. There was no way it was that simple. Perhaps, they were being controlled by someone. And to be able to control such a large number of blood locusts, that person's strength was definitely not simple. In the end, everyone slowly spread the rumors. A mysterious expert had appeared on the Flaming Dawn continent to protect this world. As for who that mysterious expert was, they had no idea. But at least this made them feel a lot more at ease. Of course, there were also people who were not only ungrateful to this mysterious expert, but even cursed him in their hearts. Since he's so strong, why didn't he appear earlier? He must have been on the Flaming Dawn continent a long time ago. Did he just watch as corpse turned the world into this? If he had appeared earlier, my child wouldn't have died. If he had shown up a little earlier, my wife wouldn't have been devoured by the corpse generals. Damned bastard. Mosher didn't know about these feelings of gratitude or resentment. But he could guess. He had already expected this when he released the blood locusts to clean up the Flaming Dawn continent. He had seen too many things in his life. He had seen too many people in his life. He didn't care about these people's feelings of gratitude or resentment at all. What can you get me by being grateful? I don't lack anything now. What can you do to me if you resent me? Beat me to death if you can. The reason why he let the blood locusts clean up this world now was just to have some peace and quiet. A world without general corpses was much quieter and cleaner than a world full of general corpses. And his blood locusts also needed to develop. Only by constantly eating could the blood locusts continue to expand their numbers. He already didn't know how many blood locusts there were. In short, as long as they flew, they could cover almost half the sky. As for whether there would be nothing to eat if there were too many blood locusts in the end, Mosher wasn't worried at all. As long as they were placed on Earth, with just a thought, they didn't need to eat at all and could continue to live. On this day, Mosher had nothing to do, so he brought Happy and Emma back to Earth. Happy said that he missed base number 1. After Mosher returned to Earth, he returned to base number 1. He revisited the old place, but things had changed. The base had changed. What used to be a corpse farm was now even larger. Because humans wanted to develop an evolution agent, they needed a large number of zombies. And the humans on Earth were still fighting to become zombie hunters. Emma felt that these people were a little pitiful. If they had followed Big Brother Mo to the Flaming Dawn continent, they would have become zombie hunters long ago. Some of them might even have become Grand Desolate Masters. Mo sure didn't care about this. Everyone had their own choices. If you made a choice, you should have the awareness to bear the consequences of this choice. Mo sure wouldn't try to change them. Everything was the result of their own choices. They stayed here for 3 days. Mo sure also released the blood locusts to help clean up the zombies on Earth. One had to know that the strength of the blood locusts was almost equivalent to a Grand Desolate Master. And even if the zombies reached super evolution, they were far inferior to the blood locusts. Therefore, every blood locusts could easily crush the zombies. These blood locusts didn't take long to clean up the zombies. In just 3 days, Earth had been completely cleaned up. Of course, Mo sure only did this casually, and the people on Earth didn't know. 3 days later, he left again with Emma and Mo sure. After they left, the humans on Earth found that there were no longer any infected creatures in the wild. They first sent a small team to investigate. Then, he sent out a large group of people to investigate further. A month later, they were finally sure that there were no more infected creatures in the world. They were all surprised. The infected creatures had existed on Earth for more than 30 years. How could they suddenly disappear completely? In the end, the people of base number 1 told the truth. A month ago, Mr. Mo came back once. In this way, everyone understood. It must be Mr. Mo. It could only be Mr. Mo. In the past, when Mr. Mo was still on Earth, he was able to exterminate the aliens when they arrived. Now that Mr. Mo had returned, the infected creatures on Earth had disappeared. This was undoubtedly him. Chapter 554. The humans on Earth had already guessed that it was Mo sure who had wiped out all the infected creatures on Earth. They were all grateful to Mo sure. At the same time, many people in base number 1 began to ask Mo sure to take them to the alien planet. From the current situation, the alien planet was obviously much better than Earth. However, Mo sure did not respond to these requests. When he went to the Flaming Continent, he had already given all the humans in base number 1 a chance. Since he had failed to seize it, Mo sure was too lazy to give them a second chance. Moreover, he was not sure if the Flaming Continent was better than Earth. Perhaps the dragons would come to the Flaming Continent tomorrow to investigate what had happened. If they found out that the humans on the Flaming Continent had killed Kongjio, then the entire Flaming Continent might face a huge disaster. After all, the Flaming Continent was just a laboratory for the dragons. All the creatures on the Flaming Continent were just experimental subjects for the dragons. If the experimental subjects killed the experimenter, the laboratory might cease to exist. The humans on Earth were much weaker than the humans on the Flaming Continent. Taking them to the Flaming Continent might be equivalent to giving them a death sentence. Therefore, based on this point, Mo sure would not take them there. Of course, Mo sure did not explain so much to them. He was too lazy to explain so much to them. Mo sure brought Happy and Emma back to the Flaming Continent. After that, Mo sure lived a peaceful and quiet life. The corpse generals on the Flaming Continent were quickly wiped out by the blood locusts. It was estimated that all the corpse generals would be wiped out in half a year at most. Mo sure, on the other hand, had set up 100 virtual watchtowers around Hunting Island number 1. This way, everything within a radius of 10,000 kilometers was under his control. Time passed. On this day, a system notification suddenly sounded in Mo sure's mind. Congratulations on leveling up. Name, Mo sure, level, rank 2 Super Evolved Dragon, level 10 Long Nian Sure, ability, click to expand. Mo sure was a little dumbfounded at first. This was really a blessing from the heavens. How did I level up so suddenly? I didn't do anything. However, he soon thought of something. It should be because of the wasteland refining platform. It seemed like a long time had passed since the last time he leveled up because of the refining stage. After such a long time, the desolate refining platform had already refined another 1,000 grand desolate masters. As a result, he naturally rose another level. Yes, that's a good idea. Mo sure nodded. However, it wouldn't be so easy for him to level up again. The desolate refining platform could only refine 10 grand desolate masters every 10 days. If he wanted to refine 10,000 grand desolate masters, it would take more than 20 years. Some people might think that if they directly moved the refining stage into Earth's space and sped up the time, wouldn't they be able to advance in minutes? Please, on Earth, Mo sure was basically a god. Did he still need to level up? It was just that the ability in Earth's space could not be brought to the real world. System, is there no way to refine a grand desolate master faster? Why don't you increase the number of refining tables to 100, no, 1,000? The system's voice sounded frowny-faced. 10 refining platforms is the limit. Mo sure was speechless. Could it be that leveling up the Dragon Palace can't increase the number of refining tables? Mo sure asked. Dragon Palace leveling up can only increase the quality of refining tables, but not the number of refining tables. Mo sure looked at the evolution points in his mind. It was a very long string of numbers. Moreover, this string of numbers was constantly jumping and increasing. This was because whether it was in the General Corpse world or the Flaming Beginning continent, the blood locusts were still constantly devouring the General Corpses. Mo sure asked, with so many evolution points, it should be enough for the Dragon Palace to level up again, right? The system's voice sounded frowny-faced. The next time the Dragon Palace levels up, it will no longer require evolution points, but the Dragon Race's rage points. 10 rage points can be used to level up the Dragon Palace again. Mo sure was once again speechless. To put it bluntly, it was just asking him to go to the Myriad Dragon domain to cause trouble. He needed to kill dragons to level up. The Dragon Palace needed the Dragon Race's rage points to level up. The angrier the Dragon Race was, the faster the Dragon Palace would level up. How do you calculate the Dragon Race's rage points? Mo sure asked. Every time a giant dragon knows that the host has killed another giant dragon, the host will receive 1 rage point from the Dragon Race. Hearing this, Mo sure was once again speechless. Let the other giant dragons know that he killed another giant dragon. This sounded very simple. Just go to the Myriad Dragon Domain's giant dragon city and shout, "I killed a giant dragon." Then the Dragon Race's rage points would continue to pile up. However, the consequences of doing this would probably be getting slapped to death in minutes. System, you're tricking me. The system was silent. Mo sure shook his head helplessly. The system's attitude was already very clear. Even though it was a fire pit, he still had to jump in. System, why do you have to push me to the opposite side of the Dragon Race? First it was the Binding Dragon, then the Dragon Slaying Blade. Then it was to kill a giant dragon to level up. And now it's some Dragon Race's rage points. The system was still silent. Mo sure knew that if the system wasn't willing to say, then even if he asked a lot of questions, the system would still remain silent. So he could only helplessly shake his head. One day, he would drag the system out and shoot it. Then, it was peaceful for a few more days. Mo sure wasn't in the base these days. Because he already had a feeling that the giant dragons were about to appear again. So he came to East Pole Island. Previously, East Pole Island was broken through by general corpses, and all the humans were turned into general corpses. Later, when the blood locusts arrived, they cleaned up all the general corpses. So now, East Pole Island was completely deserted. On the deserted island without humans, all kinds of plants began to revel. In just half a year, the streets, houses, and street lamps were covered with green vines. During the day, this place looked like a world from a fairy tale. But at night, this place was eerie and terrifying, like a ghost town. Mo came here and looked at East Pole Island that was almost completely covered by green vines. He couldn't help but recall the scene when he came to East Pole Island's City Lord mansion as a guest. East Pole Island still existed, but the City Lord had died in battle. Things remained the same, but people had changed. Mo was silent for a moment, then teleported to the top of Seaheart Waterfall. Then, with a thought, he came to the bottom of Seaheart Waterfall. In the past, when he came here, he would feel an extremely terrifying sense of danger. But now, as his strength increased, the sense of danger he felt when he came here was not as great as before. He installed a virtual sentry tower here. This way, he would be able to detect the commotion at the Seaheart Waterfall from East Pole Island. Chapter 555. On the fifth day of Mo's arrival at East Pole Island. Early in the morning, he was watching the spectacular sunrise over the eastern sea with Happy, Emma, and his son. When he and Happy came to watch the sunrise, the mountain was divided into 5 levels. The number of people who came to watch the sunrise every day was definitely more than 10,000. But now, there were only the 4 of them. When the sun struggled to jump out of the sea, intending to carry out its grand plan and start dispelling the darkness in the world, Mo suddenly frowned. Happy keenly noticed the change in Mo and gestured with her hand. "Brother Mo, is there a problem?" Mo smiled and shook his head. "That's right. Nothing." "Happy, you and Emma go back to Earth space first." Happy was a little worried. Usually, when Mo said that, it meant that something was wrong, and it was a big deal. She quickly gestured with her hand. "Brother Mo, if there's a problem, you should hide in Earth space immediately." Mo nodded. "Don't worry. Your brother Mo is so afraid of death. Of course, running for my life is my #1 priority." A hint of worry flashed in Emma's eyes. She really wanted to fight with brother Mo. But now, brother Mo's strength had grown to a level that was far beyond her reach. If she went to fight, she would only be a burden to him. So, she could only take her son and return to Earth space with Happy. Mo waited for the 3 of them to return to Earth space before he was slightly relieved. Then, he narrowed his eyes and used the virtual sentry tower to investigate the movements at Seaheart Waterfall. He saw that there were 3 people at Seaheart Waterfall this time. 2 men and 1 woman. The 2 men were very young by the age of Earthlings. They were probably only in their 20s. The woman was even younger. She looked like she was only 17 or 18. When Mo observed them with the demon dragon's eyes, he saw their attributes. Race, Giant Dragon, Level 3 Evolved Giant Dragon, Attribute, Water, Race, Giant Dragon, Level 5 Evolved Giant Dragon, Attribute, Gold, Race, Giant Dragon, Level 5 Evolved Giant Dragon, Attribute, Earth. Other than the 17 or 18-year-old girl, who was a Type 3 giant dragon, the other 2 males were Type 5 giant dragons. Seeing that there were no other giant dragons apart from these 3, Mo was slightly relieved. With his current strength as a Tier 2 super evolved colossal dragon, there was no difference whether the opponent was a Tier 3 or Tier 5 evolved colossal dragon. What he was considering now was how many evolved dragons, or even super evolved dragons, would be attracted after killing these 3. Could the current Flaming Dawn continent withstand the wrath of the dragons? After thinking for a while, he still couldn't think of a reason. Mo shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Who cares? I'll just do it. But before that, Mo wanted to observe them more. He knew that with the system's annoying nature, he would definitely have to go to the 10,000 Dragons realm in the future. Therefore, he had to learn from their behavior, their way of doing things, and their way of thinking. This way, if he were to disguise himself as a giant dragon in the Myriad Dragon realm, he would not be seen through so quickly. From Kong Jio's memories, Mo knew that these 3 were all researchers in the laboratory. Of the 2 males, one was called Jin Sanshun, and the other was called Earth Shield. They looked like they were only in their 20s, but their actual ages were already over 1,000 years old. They were all old researchers who had worked in the laboratory for over 100 years. As for the girl, she was called Shueyu. She was an intern who had just arrived. Well, although she said she had just arrived, she had actually been here for over 20 years. However, compared to the long lifespan of giant dragons, 20 years was indeed not long. After the three of them arrived, they simply determined the direction and headed toward East Pole Island. The way the three of them flew was by floating in the air. Just like the corpse ancestor. It seemed that giant dragons who had reached this level could all fly in the air. They probably used the energy in their bodies to change the density of the air around them, allowing them to float like people floating on water. Logically speaking, this kind of flying method should not be too fast. However, the three of them flew extremely fast, almost at a speed of about 10 kilometers per second, and quickly swept across the sea surface. Kong Jiao had once come to East Pole Island to massacre people. They seemed to be able to find out where Kong Jiao had been in some way. Therefore, they flew straight toward East Pole Island. Mo Shi, on the other hand, activated his stealth camouflage skill. His entire being seemed to have turned into a green plant as he climbed on top of the tallest building on the island. More than 10 minutes later, the three of them arrived at East Pole Island. After hovering above East Pole Island for a while, they landed on the tallest building where Mo Shi was. Although they were only about 5 meters away from Mo Shi, they did not notice Mo Shi. With their strength, it was impossible for them to detect Mo Shi, who was a realm higher than them. Even Mo Shi's stealth camouflage skill ignored realms. Even opponents who were stronger than Mo Shi and had a higher realm than Mo Shi would not be able to detect Mo Shi's stealth camouflage. It was even more impossible for these three of them. It was Shueiyu's first time entering an experimental planet. Her bright eyes were filled with childlike curiosity. Jin Sanshun and Earth Shield were also more relaxed. Kong Jiao was just a temporary worker. Even if he really went missing or died here, no one would hold them responsible. They just wanted to find out if Kong Jiao died of natural causes or was killed by a creature on this experimental planet. If he died of natural causes, then so be it. If he was killed by a creature on this experimental planet, then it would be a big deal. Brother Jin, did you find anything? Earth Shield asked. Jin Sanshun shook his head and said, "It's been too long. The aura he left behind is too weak. I haven't found anything yet. I think he's probably dead on this experimental planet." A hint of fear appeared in Shueiyu's eyes. There's a creature on this experimental planet that could endanger a dragon's life? Earth Shield nodded. I've already found 2 kinds of creatures when I was inspecting. One is called a general corpse, and the other is called a blood locust. This is something we didn't put in when we were releasing the experimental creatures. I don't know why they suddenly appeared on this planet. Jin Sanshun said, "We've already monitored the surface of this planet. There are no passages that can connect to other worlds on this planet's surface. So these 2 foreign creatures that suddenly appeared are likely to have entered through some underground passages. If there really is such a passage, Kong Jiao might have entered other worlds that are not within our monitoring range through those passages. So we can't detect his existence for the time being." Chapter 556. The 3 Dragon Clan investigators couldn't detect Mo Shi's presence even though they were 5 meters away from Mo Shi. They were tracking Kong Jiao's aura on East Pole Island. But after a while, they shook their heads. Too much time had passed, and Kong Jiao's aura was too weak. They couldn't find any clues at all. Then they shook their heads, followed the aura in the air, and flew to the next city. More than 2 hours later, they came to the top of a mountain. Hundreds of thousands of people lived within 100 kilometers of this mountain. And there were also tens of thousands of people living on the mountain. This was where the Flame Dawn ancient sect was located. At the same time, it was also Kong Jiao's last stop before he died. When they arrived, Jin Sanshun couldn't help but frown. He said, Kong Jio's aura disappeared here. Shui Yu asked. Disappeared? What do you mean? Earth Shield's face turned solemn. It means, he's dead. Shui Yu looked at the city below and asked in surprise. He died in this city. The humans in this city have the ability to kill Kong Jio. The ability of the creatures on this planet is set to be a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. Even the strongest can't exceed a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. With the special physique of a giant dragon, Kong Jio can definitely kill a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. And Kong Jio is a space attribute giant dragon. Even if there are thousands of Grand Desolate Masters, they can't do anything to him. How did Kong Jio die? Jin Sanshun frowned even more and said. So we have to go down and investigate. With that, Jin Sanshun took the lead to lower the altitude. The other two also lowered the altitude. When they reached a height of 200 meters, the three of them stopped. The veins on Jin Sanshun's neck bulged. His face was ferocious, and there were even some faint golden scales on his face. He opened his mouth and let out a shocking dragon roar. Roar! Roar! This dragon roar seemed to fill the entire heaven and earth. Everyone within 100 kilometers heard this roar and couldn't help but tremble. At the same time, an extreme fear rose in their hearts. That kind of fear was as if you were standing by the sea and saw a giant creature rising from the sea and occupying half the sky. Even the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect Master Luo Li couldn't help but tremble. She looked at the sky through the window. When he saw the three of them floating in the sky without the help of anything, fear rose in his heart. According to her investigation, these three people were only level 5 Grand Desolate Masters and level 3 Grand Desolate Masters. However, the feeling that the three of them gave him was far from a grade 5 or grade 3 Grand Desolate Master. Just by looking at the three of them, he felt a strong sense of oppression from the bottom of his heart. It felt as if the giant creature in the sea was right in front of you. It has already occupied your entire vision. When you look around, you can't see anything else except it. This was what Lori felt at this moment. This was the same feeling he had when he faced Island Master Mo back then. Could it be that the strength of these three people were at the same level as Island Master Mo? Lori's expression couldn't help but turn serious. As far as he knew, Island Master Mo's strength was the ceiling of the entire Flaming Land. Island Master Mo was the only one on the Flaming Continent who could do that. But now, the pressure that these three gave him was actually the same as Island Lord Mo. How could he not be shocked? As for the others, when they heard the dragon roar and looked at the three people floating in the sky like gods, they all had an urge to worship them. Those who had reached the level of Desolate Master could barely withstand it. However, those below the level of Desolate Master almost knelt on the ground without any hesitation. Because in their perception, if they didn't immediately kneel down, they would probably die in the hands of these three people in the next second. In the sky, Jin Sanshun looked at the people kneeling on the ground and felt a trace of satisfaction in his heart. When they were in the 10,000 Dragon Realm, they were just ordinary researchers. Every day, they did nothing but research. There was no enjoyment, and the money they earned was little. Moreover, they were ordered around by the capitalists all day long. Now that they had come to an experimental planet, they finally enjoyed godlike treatment. No wonder Kong Jio liked to go to various experimental planets. Nominally, it was to do research, but in fact, it was to enjoy this feeling. Facing these ant-like humans, they could beat, scold, and kill them as they wished. Here, as long as they didn't go too far, they were almost not restricted by any rules. To put it bluntly, here, they were gods. Thinking of this, a trace of satisfaction appeared on Jin Sanshui's face. He spoke to the humans kneeling on the ground below and said in a condescending tone, "Tell me, how did the previous giant dragon die?" Hearing this person's question, the humans below all trembled again. No one knew how that giant dragon died. Because they didn't see anything at that time, they didn't even know that the giant dragon died. They only saw that after the giant dragon suddenly disappeared, it did not appear again. They guessed that the giant dragon was already dead. Now that these three people said this, they knew that the giant dragon was indeed dead. As for how it died, they really didn't know. They only knew that if the giant dragon really died, then it must be related to Island Master Mo. But would they say it? If Island Master Mo's strength could really kill the giant dragon, then wouldn't he be more terrifying than the giant dragon? Then if they rashly revealed information about Island Master Mo now, wouldn't they be courting death? Earth Shield saw that none of the humans below were telling the truth and snorted coldly. He clenched his right fist slightly. The ground below began to shake violently. It was like an earthquake. The surrounding houses collapsed continuously, and at the same time, screams were heard. In the next moment, a fist formed from mud suddenly stretched out from the ground. This fist was extremely huge. At its longest point, it was at least 5 kilometers long. In the sky, it stretched out its 5 fingers and made a grabbing motion, as if it was showing off to the humans below. If this fist smashed down, who knew how many humans below would die? Seeing this, the Flame Genesis Ancient Sect Master could only stand up and shout to the three people in the sky. I know. Hearing this, all the humans turned to look at Lori in shock. In the previous battle with the giant dragon, Lori didn't seem like someone who would betray his benefactor. One must know that it was because of Island Master Mo that they were able to survive until now. If it wasn't for Island Master Mo, all of them would have been slaughtered by that evil dragon. What was wrong with Sect Master Luo? Chapter 557. No one understood. Given Sect Master Luo Li's character, it was impossible for him to betray his benefactor. What was he trying to do now? In the sky, Jin Sanshun, Earth Shield, and Shui Yu all turned to look at the adorable girl with 2 ponytails and wearing the JK uniform. Shui Yu couldn't help but reveal a gentle expression and asked. Little girl, since you know, tell us. How did that giant dragon die? Luo Li chuckled and said. At that time, that giant dragon was killing innocent people here. Moreover, it seemed to have some spatial ability. It suddenly disappeared and suddenly appeared in another place. Then it suddenly disappeared, and since then, it has never appeared again. Actually, if you didn't tell us, we wouldn't even know that it was dead. The surrounding people only understood when they heard this. Sect Master Luo wasn't trying to betray Island Master Mo. He was just using words to deal with these 3 strangers. Shui Yu looked at such a beautiful and cute girl and helplessly turned to look at Jin Sanshun and Earth Shield. The clue ended here. She didn't think that this cute girl would lie to her. Jin Sanshun pushed his glasses and said. Shui Yu, you're still too young. Then, he signaled to Earth Shield. Earth Shield nodded. He clenched his right hand into a fist and smashed it towards the ground. Following the movement of his fist, the 5-kilometer-long giant fist stirred up the clouds in the sky and smashed towards the ground. At this moment, all the humans on the ground panicked. This was especially true for the humans who were currently under his fist. If this fist landed, the few thousand of them would definitely die. Many of the timid humans were already crying at this point. From their point of view, they were definitely going to die. Many parents hugged their children tightly in their arms. Many old people also closed their eyes in despair. Sect Master Luo Li sent out a wave of energy towards the fist formed by the giant soil. However, the energy she unleashed was unable to withstand a single blow from the enormous earth fist. It was instantly dispersed by the fist. Seeing that his fist was less than 50 meters away from hitting the ground, Lori roared angrily, "Damn it!" No, however, the 3 people in the sky didn't have any pity on their faces. It was as if they were 3 children who were stepping on ants. However, at this moment, a ghastly white energy suddenly appeared without warning. It instantly collided with the giant soil fist. Crack, crack, the huge mud fist was instantly sealed in ice. It turned into a 5-kilometer-long ice fist. Then, the ice fist suddenly shattered. It turned into a sky full of ice rain and fell from the sky. The three people in the sky were stunned. Then, they looked at the center of the falling ice rain with sharp eyes. They saw a figure slowly appeared. He was dressed in black. He looked ordinary on the outside. But at this moment, he was floating in the ice in the sky to make the three giant dragons. This was because they saw that this guy wasn't using any energy at all and was just quietly floating in the air. This method was exactly the same as the giant dragons. Could it be that this guy was a giant dragon? No, that's impossible. Only the myriad dragon realm had giant dragons. Other than that, there were no giant dragons in any other corner of the universe. Especially on this distant experimental planet number 666, it was even more impossible for other giant dragons to exist. Because all the giant dragons who wanted to come to experimental planet number 666 had to go through the teleportation platform in their laboratory. It was impossible to fly for tens of thousands of years in the universe to come to this barren experimental planet number 666 with the strength of a giant dragon's body. And when the humans on the ground saw that it was Immortal, they all cheered. Island Master Mo. Island Master Mo saved us. Island Master Mo finally appeared. We are saved. Luo Li's eyes flashed slightly. Because he felt that Immortal was stronger than the last time he saw him. The feeling that Immortal gave him now was stronger than the feeling that the three people in the sky gave him. What a strong pressure. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. At the same time, this also made him feel a sense of defeat. After seeing Immortal's powerful strength last time, he had been cultivating in seclusion on the mountain. He hoped that one day he could surpass Immortal, or at least catch up to Immortal's strength. However, after working hard in seclusion for so long, when they met again, he found that the gap between the two of them was not narrowed, but widened. It was so big that he couldn't reach it at all. This feeling was really King unbearable. The three giant dragons, at this time, saw Immortal break Earth Shield's Earth Fist with just one blow. They were all very surprised. In this case, this person's strength was definitely not much different from Earth Shield, or even slightly stronger than Earth Shield. Since such a powerful creature had appeared on the 666 experimental planet, Kongjiu must have been killed by him. You killed Kongjiu. Shui, you took the lead to ask this question. The corners of Immortal's mouth curled into a smile. If you're talking about that evil dragon that goes around killing innocent people, yes. As soon as these words came out, all the humans below felt as if a stone had been lifted from their hearts. It was really Island Master Mo who killed that evil dragon. Previously, they had been guessing that the evil dragon never came back and was very likely dead. And the one who killed that evil dragon was very likely Island Master Mo. But that was after all just a guess. Now that they got confirmation from the person involved, they finally put down the stone in their hearts. Although Lori had already guessed this result, he still couldn't help but gasp at this time. That giant dragon was too powerful, so powerful that even the current him was unable to match up to it. But it was killed by Island Master Mo. Exactly how strong was Island Master Mo? The three giant dragons saw Immortal admit it openly, and their faces turned cold again. This guy really killed Kongjiu. At the same time, in Immortal's mind, he saw a data change. Dragon Race Rage, 310, Immortal's heart was filled with happiness. Now it was 3. As long as the other giant dragons knew that he killed the giant dragon, then Dragon Palace could level up again. Unfortunately, there were too few giant dragons this time. It couldn't level up immediately. Earth Shield saw Immortal admit it so generously and couldn't help but be angry. I don't care who you are or what creature you are. Since you killed the giant dragon, then die. As he said that, his figure flashed and instantly appeared in front of Immortal. Spatial giant dragons weren't the only ones who could teleport. As long as they reached the level of giant dragon, basically, they could teleport. But the distance of teleportation wasn't long, it was within 1,000 meters. In the next moment, a scene that shocked everyone happened. Chapter 558. The Earth Shield's figure instantly disappeared, and in the next moment, he appeared in front of Mo. The speed of teleportation shocked the humans on the ground. Could Island Master Mo deal with such an enemy? But in the next moment, they were all stunned. Including Jin Sanshun and Shui Yu in the sky, they were also stunned. When the Earth Shield teleported in front of Mo, only made a simple action. He stretched out his right hand. He instantly grabbed his neck. The Earth Shield was grabbed by the neck and was shocked. This guy's speed was so fast. In his shock, he hurriedly tried to break free. However, the power in his body seemed to be covered by some kind of energy. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to break free from this plier-like hand. He wanted to transform into his dragon form so that he could naturally break free from this hand. But the terrifying thing was that under the cover of that energy, he couldn't even restore his dragon form. How could this human be so strong? However, after struggling for a moment, he stopped struggling. He calmed down and looked at Jin Sanshun and Shui Yu beside him. Although this human might have a way to kill a dragon, he was sure that this human wouldn't be able to kill him in a short period of time. A human killing a dragon in just a few seconds. What a joke. One had to know that even a dragon would find it very difficult to kill another dragon. After all, a dragon's body was extremely strong. Moreover, its self-healing ability could be said to be abnormal. Therefore, when the dragon clan dealt with dragons who had committed capital crimes, they would basically exile them. They would exile them to a desolate planet with a harsh climate. Only when dealing with those death row prisoners with particularly serious circumstances would they use the Dragon Breath atomic cannon to directly blast them into pieces. Therefore, he didn't need to panic at all. However, Jin Sanchuan's expression was solemn as he pointed at Mo. Let him go. This roar was accompanied by the sound of a dragon's roar. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the humans couldn't help but tremble when they heard this sound. Especially these humans below the battlefield, many of them who were weak actually knelt on the ground. It wasn't that they wanted to kneel. It was that fear in their hearts that made them have no choice but to kneel. However, puff, what responded to Jin Sanshun was the dragon salure in Mo's hand. The dragon salure easily pierced through Earth Shield's chest. Then, from the heart to the crotch, the Earth Shield was cut in half. Then, Mo threw it. Earth Shield's body drew an arc in the air as he flew far away and fell from the sky. When he was halfway down, the tattoo revealed its true form. It was an earthy yellow dragon that was more than 5,000 meters long. When such a huge monster fell from the sky, everyone's expression changed in horror. Boom! When the huge earth dragon descended from the sky, it caused the ground to shake violently. The dust that was kicked up covered the sky and the sun. In the sky, Jin Sanshun and Shui Yu saw how easily Mo killed Earth Shield. Both of their expressions changed in shock. Dragon form. Jin Sanshun roared and began to transform. Shui Yu, who was next to him, received his reminder. Her body also produced a huge amount of energy, causing her body to continuously transform. A moment later, 2 giant dragons appeared in the sky. It was a giant golden dragon that was 5,000 meters long. The other was a 3,000-meter-long blue dragon. The 2 giant dragons let out 2 angry dragon roars. Oh, roar, roar, roar. This dragon roar caused more than half of the humans on the ground to involuntarily kneel down. These 2 gigantic creatures almost covered half of the sky. This kind of huge pressure and extreme fear made these humans almost unable to breathe. Even a super expert like Luo Li could not help but turn pale, his body trembling slightly. Facing such a huge existence, he had no chance to resist. All the humans felt that it was ironic. They had worshipped dragons in the flaming beginning continent for tens of thousands of years. In these tens of thousands of years, as long as someone had a trace of dragon bloodline, they would be revered by the world and enjoy everyone's worship. But now that the giant dragons had appeared, they were going to start a massacre. This was something they could not accept. However, at this moment, Mosher also changed. His body, in a short 30 seconds, constantly emitted cracking sounds like trees breaking. Almost in a short instant, his body rapidly grew larger. In the process of growing larger, his shape was also constantly changing. Finally, his body stopped at a length of 10,000 meters. Not to mention other things, just his head alone was twice as long as the golden dragon. At the same time, the black scales on his body were 100 meters in diameter. The ferocious barbs on his head looked much more ferocious than the golden and blue dragons. The tip of his tail was in the shape of a round hammer. The entire hammer was more than 500 meters in diameter. And this hammer was full of spikes. Its wings looked tattered and full of holes of various sizes. And it didn't have one pair of wings, but two. Around this giant dragon's body, there was a faint black demonic aura lingering. At this moment, all the humans on the ground were no longer just kneeling in front of Mosher. They were crawling on the ground and trembling all over at the same time. Although they knew that this giant dragon was on their side. The pressure and fear this giant dragon brought to them was far greater than the other two giant dragons. Even Lori couldn't help but take a few steps back. The invisible murderous aura emitted from this black giant dragon made her heart tremble. As for the other two giant dragons in the sky. The blue giant dragon's body trembled and almost fell from the sky. And the golden giant dragon also trembled slightly. What did he see? Tattered wings. This was the bloodthirsty demon dragon. The dragon clan's greatest enemy wasn't the insect clan, nor was it any other race in the universe. It was the bloodthirsty demon dragon. In the war between the insect clan and the dragon clan only lost more than 100,000 giant dragons. But the bloodthirsty demon dragon had killed more than 1,000,000 giant dragons. Therefore, the giant dragons hated the bloodthirsty demon dragon to the bone. At the same time, they also had a deep understanding of the bloodthirsty demon dragon's strength. In the entire history of the giant dragons, only 3 bloodthirsty demon dragons had appeared. But every time a bloodthirsty demon dragon appeared, blood flowed like rivers and corpses were everywhere. Every time a bloodthirsty demon dragon appeared, it would cause a great loss of people in the 10,000 dragon realm. This showed how terrifying the bloodthirsty demon dragon was. But the bloodthirsty demon dragons that appeared in history all had 2 wings. But the bloodthirsty demon dragon in front of them now had 4 wings. What did this mean? What did this mean? Jin Sanshun didn't know. But he knew that in front of this 4-winged bloodthirsty demon dragon, he was afraid. Chapter 559. Mosher transformed into a 4-winged bloodthirsty demon dragon. The golden dragon in the sky was filled with fear. The blue dragon couldn't even fly stably. They had already guessed that only a giant dragon could kill a giant dragon. So this human was most likely a dragon in disguise. But they never thought that it would be the infamous bloodthirsty demon dragon in history. Every time a bloodthirsty demon dragon appeared in history, blood would flow like rivers and corpses would be everywhere. Every time a bloodthirsty demon dragon appeared in history, countless dragon families, sects, and academies would be destroyed. Every time a bloodthirsty demon dragon appeared in history, it was a great calamity for the myriad dragon realm. And now, these 2 small dragons were the first to discover the appearance of a bloodthirsty demon dragon. The golden dragon couldn't help but let out a gulp. His voice trembled slightly as he begged for mercy in the dragon race's lengthy language. Lord Demon Dragon, I'm sorry to disturb you. We were really careless and offended you. Please calm down. We'll leave now, we'll leave now. We'll never dare to appear in front of you again. Mosher couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with them. His hammerhead-shaped giant tail swung violently. Crack! A thick bolt of blue-white lightning instantly struck the golden dragon. The golden dragon's body trembled, and with a scream, it fell from the sky. However, Mosher didn't wait for it to completely fall. He stretched out his thick and sharp claws. He slashed across the golden dragon's chest. Crack, 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 the sound of something breaking could be heard. Mosher's sharp claws directly cut open the golden dragon's stomach. Dragons were indeed difficult to kill. But in front of the bloodthirsty demon dragon, these dragons were like paper. The bloodthirsty demon dragon's claws carried demonic energy. When this demonic energy entered the body, it could kill the dragon's cells in minutes, causing the wounds on their bodies to be unable to heal at all. This was also why the bloodthirsty demon dragon was so terrifying. It could be said that the bloodthirsty demon dragon was the dragon race's natural nemesis. And Mosher's claw directly crushed the golden dragon's huge heart. Golden red blood continuously flowed from the tip of his claws. Every drop of blood that fell to the ground formed a golden red blood pool. The golden dragon's eyes were filled with endless fear. In the end, it crashed down from the sky. Only the light blue dragon was left. At this moment, it did not look like a 3,000-meter-long dragon. Instead, he looked like a pitiful chick that had just fallen from its nest. In its panic, it kept flapping its wings, trying to escape. At the same time, he kept teleporting. However, Mosher did not give it any chance. His figure flashed, and he teleported in front of the light blue dragon. Before it could teleport again, Mosher's giant tail was covered in blue-white lightning. It drew a huge semicircle with a radius of nearly 4,000 meters in the air and smashed into the head of the light blue dragon. Hey, hey! The dragon's head caved in from the impact. At the same time, blue-white lightning flashed all over his body. The entire dragon body drew a huge arc in the sky and smashed into a mountain more than 5,000 meters high in the distance. Rumble! That mountain collapsed with a loud bang. In the end, this collapsed mountain became the grave of this blue dragon. In the sky, the 10,000-meter-long Mosher flapped his four wings and circled in the sky 3 times. He opened his mouth and let out a shocking dragon roar. Roar! If Jin Sanchuan's dragon roar just now made everyone feel fear and have the urge to crawl on the ground. Then Mosher's dragon roar made people feel extreme fear in their hearts. It was as if they would be torn to pieces by this huge creature in the next moment. Then, with a mouthful of dragon breath, Mosher completely sealed the 3 enormous dragon corpses in ice. At this moment, as a super-evolved dragon, the power of his black ice breath was extremely terrifying. With a dragon breath, not only would the area within a radius of more than 50 kilometers be frozen, but it was not only the surface that was frozen. If someone could observe from a microscopic point of view, they would find that after these ice layers froze the dragon corpses, tiny ice spikes constantly poked out and entered the dragon's body through the sweat pores of these dragons' bodies. Then, ice flowers constantly bloomed in their muscle tissues. This process was extremely short. In just over 10 seconds, these dragon corpses were completely frozen from the outside to the inside, including their internal organs and even the insides of the dragon bones. Then, Mosher's dragon consciousness swept across. Crash! The 3 dragon corpses turned into ice crystals on the ground. The ice crystals that the Earth Shield turned into were earthy yellow. The ice crystals that Jin Sanshun turned into were golden yellow. The ice crystals that Shui Yu turned into were aqua blue. It looked very beautiful. When all the humans saw this scene, they were all amazed. In their eyes, the 3 dragons that were so powerful that they had no chance of winning at all were like sand sculptures in front of this even more powerful dragon. With just 2 or 3 hits, they would turn into grains of sand on the ground. This giant dragon with 2 pairs of tattered wings actually had such terrifying strength. The next moment, Mosher once again transformed into his human form. Maintaining the dragon form consumed too much energy in his body. Previously, Kong Jiu was able to continuously replenish energy in his body because of his spatial attribute as a dragon. Every time he teleported, it was an opportunity for him to replenish his energy. That was why he could maintain his dragon form on Earth. But the other dragons could not. Especially Mo Shi's 10,000-meter-long dragon body, the energy consumed every second was huge. So when he had nothing to do, it was better to use his dragon form as little as possible. At this moment, all the humans on the ground did not get up. Lori clasped his fists at Mo Shi. Thank you for saving my life, Island Master Mo. She had the body of a lowly and the heart of a man. When she did this action, it gave people a very strange feeling. The tens of thousands of humans on the ground also said to Mo Shi in unison. Thank you for saving my life, Island Master Mo. Mo Shi glanced at these humans and did not say much. His figure flashed, and he disappeared. After a long time, these humans stood up one after another. Island Master Mo had saved their lives for the second time. They had nothing to repay Island Master Mo with, so they could only wish Island Master Mo a long life and good health. At this moment, Lori no longer felt the disappointment in her heart. She finally understood why her strength was far from Mo Shi's. After a long time, she sighed. I have no regrets in my life to be able to see Island Master Mo transform into a dragon. At the same time, Mo Shi returned to East Pole Island and continued to wait here. From the memories of the three dragons, he had learned a lot about this laboratory. He was considering whether to wait for the dragons to attack again or to kill them first. Chapter 560. Mo Shi was thinking about whether he should stay here and wait, or take the initiative to go to the 10,000 Dragon Realm. After thinking for a long time, he finally decided to go to the 10,000 Dragon Realm. This was equivalent to leaving his comfort zone. Everything in the 10,000 Dragon Realm was unknown. Once his identity was exposed there, he would be surrounded by hundreds of millions of dragons in the entire star field. Therefore, this was quite risky. But if he stayed here, it would be even more dangerous. Kong Jiu, who he killed before, was just a temporary worker in the laboratory. No one would care. But the three people he killed just now were all official employees of the laboratory. And Jean Sanshun and Earth Shield were researchers who had worked in the laboratory for many years. If they went missing, they would soon attract the attention of the dragons. Not long after, they would send other dragons to the Flaming Land again. When the time came, more and more dragons would come to the Flaming Land. The entire Flaming Land would probably be destroyed. Instead of that, he might as well take the initiative to go to the 10,000 Dragon Realm. At least he would be in the dark when he went to the 10,000 Dragon Realm. But if he stayed on Earth, it was equivalent to being in the open. Therefore, on this day, after all the corpses on the Flaming Land were cleaned up, Mo Shi summoned all the blood locusts back. At this time, the number of blood locusts was unknown. In short, when they landed on the ground, all they could see were blood-red blood locusts. It was like a blood-red carpet was laid on the ground. When they flew in the air, they covered the sky and the sun. The entire sky seemed to have turned blood-red. With so many blood locusts, they might be useful in the 10,000 Dragon Realm. On this day, Mo Shi took Happy, Emma, and her son back to Hunting Island No. 1. This time, he did not plan to bring these humans to the 10,000 Dragon Realm. The weakest in the 10,000 Dragon Realm were dragons, which were equivalent to the level of a desolate hunter. And a dragon could easily challenge a desolate hunter who was 5 or 6 levels higher. If he brought so many people there, they would only be a burden. Of course, he still had to tell Happy about such a big matter. After hearing Mo Shi's words, Happy gestured. Wherever Brother Mo goes, I will go. As for where to go, she did not care. As long as she could be with Mo Shi, it was fine. Emma naturally wanted to go as well. Because after leaving Mo Shi's Earth, her son became an idiot again. Therefore, she would rather stay in Earth's space forever. Moreover, if he went to the myriad dragon realm, he might be able to find a way to restore his son to a normal person. Emosure went to find Guojutao and said, "Brother Gua, I'm not sure what to do. Now that all the general corpses on the Flaming Dawn continent have been dealt with the strength of more than 100 grand desolate masters on the first hunting island, no one on the Flaming Dawn continent can challenge us. I plan to leave for a while. During this time, you will be the only leader in the base." If it was in the past, Guojutao would have agreed without hesitation. This was because he trusted Emosure unconditionally. But this time, he could see the seriousness in Emosure's expression. After thinking for a while, he asked, "Mr. Emo, where are you going?" Emosure said, "The 10,000 Dragon Star area." Guojutao asked doubtfully, "Where is that?" Emosure said, "The star area where the dragons live, a star area that is not so friendly to us humans." Guojutao gasped inwardly. Although he had guessed that there were places where the dragons lived in the universe, when he heard Mr. Emo say it himself, he was still shocked. "Mr. Emo, was it really okay for you to go to such a place alone, or rather, with 4 people?" But seeing that Emosure had obviously made up his mind, he had nothing to say. He nodded. "Mr. Emo, please rest assured. I will guard the base until you come back." Emosure nodded. "Okay, that's good. By the way, don't tell anyone that I'm leaving, lest it causes chaos in the base." Guojutao nodded. "I think so too." On this day, on a bright morning, Emosure left the base. After several teleportations, he arrived above the Sea Heart waterfall. Looking at the Sea Heart waterfall, which was like a huge eye staring at the sky, would make people feel a bone-deep fear. Emosure paused for a moment, then flew down the huge Sea Heart waterfall. After flying down for 2 kilometers, he looked up at the sky. He saw that the waterfall around him was like a tall wall, as if it was going to crush him. That kind of huge pressure could not be understood by those who had not experienced it. Emosure shook his head slightly and continued flying down. After flying for another 5 kilometers, he finally reached the bottom of the Sea Heart waterfall. There was a huge deep pool here. Strangely, the water from the surrounding waterfalls fell into the deep pool, but it did not splash at all. The deep pool was black. Obviously, it was because the water was too deep. When Emosure used his dragon's will to investigate, he could not see the bottom of the water at all. It was the same situation as last time. However, what was different from the last time was that this time, he knew what was going on from the memories of those WIRMS. With a leap, he reached the center of the pool. The next moment, he saw that the originally calm and deep water suddenly moved. More than 10 streams of water as thick as an arm climbed up his body like snakes. Finally, they completely wrapped him up. The next moment, he was suddenly dragged under the water. Then, layers of ripples appeared on the surface of the water. When the ripples disappeared, the water surface once again regained its eternal calmness. After Emosure was dragged under the water, his body suddenly became light. It was as if he was in a space without gravity. A moment later, the gravity returned. His entire body was instantly bounced up by a force. The next moment, splash, waves surged. He was lifted up from another pool. This was the Dragon Clan's teleportation method. According to the memories of the dragons, this was the Dragon Clan's high-tech teleportation method. But no matter how he looked at it, it looked like a fantasy teleportation method. But Emosure did not have time to pay attention to this at the moment. The moment he appeared, his dragon's will covered a radius of hundreds of kilometers. Especially within 10 kilometers, he did not let go of even a petal or a blade of grass. This was a laboratory building. The laboratory building had 3 floors above ground and 8 floors below ground. In the entire 10,000 dragon realm, this could only be considered a small laboratory. The laboratory mainly studied the evolution of species in their natural form, providing reference and samples for the dragons. In order to allow the dragons to correct their evolutionary path. This was an extremely time-consuming experiment. And because it took a long time, it was an insignificant experiment in a short period of time. Chapter 561. If possible, no dragon would be willing to do this experiment. However, this experiment had to be done. It might affect the future development of the dragons. Therefore, this experiment didn't seem very important, and it was impossible to produce results in a short period of time. However, in order to allow this experiment to continue, the dragon race gave a lot of rewards. The salary of every researcher in this laboratory was 3 times that of other laboratories. Even so, there were still many researchers who were unwilling to come. Because other experiments might produce results in dozens or hundreds of years. Once there was a major discovery, their value would skyrocket. Their social status would also rise crazily. Almost instantly, they would be able to enter the upper class, enjoy flowers, applause, and the worship of people. In this laboratory, many dragons had spent their long lives here, but in the end, they did not discover anything. Therefore, this place was regarded as a place to eat and wait for death. It was a place for idle dragons to spend their time. It was also a place for the dragons to retire. Therefore, there was a resounding and grand nickname for this place, Retirement Laboratory. At this moment, Mosher scanned with his dragon sense. In the entire 8th floor of the laboratory, there were about 50 dragons. Most of the dragons were just ordinary dragons. There were about 3 evolved dragons. At the same time, there were no other buildings within a radius of 20 kilometers of this building. Mosher was overjoyed. Then, with a teleport, he arrived at the dormitory on the 1st floor. In the staff dormitory, there were more than 10 dragons sleeping. Of course, these dragons were usually injected with morphing agents and transformed into human forms. With a thought, Mosher's dragon-slaying saber appeared in his right hand. Chi! With a soft sound, the dragon-slaying saber had already swept across the dragon's neck. Gulp! The dragon's head immediately fell to the ground. Mosher was a little surprised. He didn't use much strength just now. He only gently wiped it, intending to cut off the dragon's carotid artery. Why did his head fall off? But he understood after thinking about it. The dragon-slaying saber was very sharp no matter what it cut. But when it met a dragon, it would be 10 times sharper. It was made for dragon slaying. Its material, structure, shape, casting method, and even the way energy was circulated in it were all specially used to restrain dragons. Therefore, when it encountered the flesh of a dragon, it was naturally much sharper. After the dragons died, they would immediately revert to their original form. If the dragon corpse were to reveal its true form, the entire building would collapse in an instant. Therefore, with a thought, Mosher took out tens of thousands of blood locusts. These tens of thousands of blood locusts instantly filled the entire room. When they smelled the blood, they immediately rushed toward the dragon corpse like flies smelling feces. After the giant dragon transformed into a human, although its skin looked similar to human skin, it was actually much denser. Naturally, it was much stronger than human skin. The blood locusts naturally couldn't scratch such skin, even if it was just a corpse. Thus, these blood locusts swallowed it through the incision on its stomach. In just a few seconds, the dragon corpse was swallowed until only an empty shell was left. All that was left of his head was a skull. Under such circumstances, it could no longer reveal its true form. Mosher threw the outer shell of the dragon corpse into Earth space. Then, he put the blood locusts back into the Earth space. At the same time, a system notification sounded in his mind. Dragon Slayer, 4 out of 10, as long as he killed 6 more giant dragons, he could level up again. The system only gave the number of dragons slain, but it didn't say the quality of the dragons slain. On this point, it was still quite conscientious. In the future, he only needed to choose those ordinary dragons with low strength to kill. In the 10,000 dragon realm, the number of ordinary giant dragons was extremely large. It was convenient and safe to find such a giant dragon to kill. With a teleport, Emosher came to the room next door. With a flash of the Dragon Slayer saber, the giant dragon's head rolled to the side. This time, Emosher didn't let the blood locusts out. It was too troublesome to let the blood locusts out and in. With a single thought, Feng Xingjian kept the huge dragon into his earth space. In the earth space, the blood locusts could devour the giant dragon's corpse at will. The system notification sounded in his mind again. Dragon Slayer, 5 out of 10, next, after killing another 5 giant dragons, the system notification sounded in his mind. Dragon Slayer, 10 out of 10, you can level up. Do you want to level up now? Emosher was delighted. Level up. The system's voice sounded. Level up successful. Dragon Slayer points required for the next level up, 0/50. Emosher only felt his entire body tremble, and a very comfortable feeling spread throughout his body. Then, there was a feeling of emptiness and powerlessness after the comfort. After coming to the 10,000 dragon realm, even the leveling up was different from before. However, he had only been here for less than 5 minutes, and he had already leveled up. As expected, coming to the 10,000 dragon realm was the right choice. Although it was more risky. But the risks were often proportional to the benefits. He took a look at his attributes in his mind. Name, Emosher, Level 3 Super Evolved Giant Dragon, Level 10 Long Nian Shi, Ability. Click to expand. Emosher was secretly delighted. Then, next, he would kill all the giant dragons in this laboratory building. As for whether these giant dragons were guilty or innocent, Emosher couldn't care less. From another perspective, when these giant dragons went to the Flaming Land, were the humans of the Flaming Land not guilty? Were they all innocent? In their eyes, the humans of the Flaming Land were just experimental subjects, just like any pig, cow, or dog. They could kill if they wanted to, without any burden. Therefore, Emosher didn't have any burden when killing these giant dragons. Emosher had also considered letting these giant dragons know that he was the one who killed Jin Sanshun and the others. That way, the Dragon Clan's rage points would increase a little, and the Dragon Palace would be able to level up again in minutes. But after thinking about it, he gave up on this plan. Since they were newcomers, it was best to get rid of them quietly. If something went wrong in the middle, then he would be courting death. He wouldn't do anything courting death. Soon, all the sleeping giant dragons were killed. Then, Mosher teleported and arrived behind a giant dragon who was working in front of a computer screen. That giant dragon was just an ordinary level 7 giant dragon. He didn't notice Emosher's arrival. Emosher's dragon-slaying saber gently waved and cut off half of his head. There was no difference between killing him and killing the sleeping dragons. Emosher felt that it was very strange for the giant dragons to use computers. In his impression, shouldn't the giant dragons lie in caves and sleep on a large amount of gold coins and jewelry? To the giant dragons, there shouldn't be any technology. What they knew was fire, cold, and many other magic. But in fact, the reason why the Dragon Clan was powerful was not only because of their long lives and strong physique, but also because of their advanced technology. Chapter 562. It could be said that the dragon race's technology was ahead of any other civilization's technology. Their strength was not only because of their physical strength, but also because of their long lifespan. It was also because of the strength of their technology. Because of their long lifespan, they had much more time than other civilizations to improve their technology. Therefore, the dragon race was actually the most technologically advanced civilization in the entire universe. Such a dragon race was almost invincible. This also created their overlord status in the universe. Their computers were not virtual displays. Instead, they were a type of display called an air screen. When needed, it would compress the surrounding display. Within a certain range, the density of the air would increase greatly, condensing into a translucent curved display. When not needed, the compressed air would automatically disperse. The advantage of this display was that it did not occupy space when not in use. Moreover, it would not be damaged. After Emosher killed the giant dragon, he threw his corpse into Earth's space to feed the blood locusts. Then, with a teleport, he arrived behind the giant dragon in another room. With a wave of the dragon's salure, he chopped off the giant dragon's head. With ease, he chopped off the giant dragon's head. This was the monitoring room. Emosher operated the computer according to the memories of these people. Soon, he closed and deleted all the images that he had taken earlier. At the same time, he took away the astrolabe that stored the data. This astrolabe had a much larger storage capacity than the hard disk on Earth. It was no exaggeration to say that an astrolabe could store all the data on Earth without any problems. Although he had deleted the image just now, there might be some experts who could recover the data. Therefore, it was safer to take the astrolabe away. Then, he came to another room. There were 5 giant dragons here. Emosher waved the dragon salure. Swoosh, with just one slash, the heads of the 3 giant dragons closest to him were cut off. The other 2 giant dragons heard the commotion and hurriedly turned around. They saw a black blade light flash past. The top of their heads flew up. At the same time, a system notification appeared in Emosher's mind. Frowny-faced dragon races rage, 510. When these 2 giant dragons saw Emosher kill the 3 giant dragons with one slash, they would naturally be enraged. Emosher threw the corpses of the 5 giant dragons into Earth's space again. The massacre continued. In this way, Emosher slaughtered more than 50 dragons without anyone uttering a single scream. At this moment, he looked into his mind again. Dragon slaying, 4,350, as long as he killed 7 more dragons, he would be able to level up again. It had to be said that leveling up in the 10,000 dragon realm was really fast. Of course, there was also a huge risk involved. If something happened to so many dragons in this laboratory, it would definitely attract attention. There will be a lot of people coming to investigate. Therefore, he had to keep a low profile for a period of time. It wouldn't be too late to stir up trouble after the storm had passed. Of course, before this, Emosher wanted to kill a few more of them and reach beyond rank 4. Therefore, after he slaughtered all the giant dragons here and destroyed the teleportation pool, he scanned the area with his dragon telekinesis and discovered that there were 7 giant dragons flying over from more than 20 kilometers away. Emosher's figure flashed, arriving in front of those several colossal dragons. When the dragons saw this guy suddenly blocking their way, they were all a little angry. Motherf *Kur, are you crazy? Get out of my way. If you don't get out of my way, I'll slap you to death. Swish, as soon as he finished speaking, a black saber light flashed. The head of the giant dragon flew up. Seeing this, the expressions of the other 6 dragons changed. In Emosher's mind, a system notification immediately appeared. Frowny-faced dragon rage, 11 out of 10, Dragon Palace can be upgraded. Do you want to upgrade now? His rage was finally full. But Emosher didn't have the time to care about this. His figure flashed, and he was already behind these dragons. He swung his saber. Swish! Immediately, 2 dragon heads flew into the air. Emosher shook his head slightly. Originally, these 6 dragons were very close to each other, and he could have killed them all with one slash. But the dragons all knew how to teleport. Other than the 2 that reacted slowly and had their heads chopped off, the remaining 4 had already teleported in 4 directions. Damn, the dragons were indeed difficult to deal with. Emosher had no choice but to use his mind. The corpses of the dragons that he had killed just now quickly turned into flesh and blood. Then, they condensed into 4 thick blood-red chains, one end deeply embedded into the ground. The other end flew towards the 4 dragons. In an instant, it wrapped around the legs of the 4 dragons. The moment they were tied up, they felt the energy in their bodies quickly drain away. They kept trying to break free, but they couldn't break free from the blood-red chains. They wanted to transform into their dragon forms. However, the chains seemed to be releasing something into their bodies that suppressed their energy. They couldn't transform at all. They wanted to open their mouths and cry for help. But when they opened their mouths, what came out was not the terrifying dragon roar of the giant dragons. It was just the cry of ordinary humans. This made them feel extreme fear in their hearts. Imagine, you were originally a human. But one day, you suddenly found that you had become an ant, and no matter how you struggled, no matter how you thought, you couldn't return to your human form, and you could be trampled to death. Are you afraid? Amidst the screams of the 4 dragons, Emosher teleported 4 times and destroyed the 4 dragons. At the same time, another notification appeared in his mind: frowny-faced dragon slaying, 50/50, upgrade available, do you want to upgrade now? Emosher ignored the system notification. He first put the dragon corpses into the space. He originally wanted to destroy the teleportation pool in the laboratory first. But now, he dismissed this idea. If he destroyed the teleportation pool, it was very likely to arouse the suspicion of the dragons who would investigate in the future. Since they could build this teleportation pool, they could repair it. If he went to the Flaming Land, wouldn't the Flaming Land be in trouble? On the other hand, if he ignored the teleportation pool, the people who came to investigate would never think that a creature from a low-level plane like the Flaming Land would come and slaughter this laboratory. So Emosher teleported and directly left the laboratory. After more than 2 hours, he arrived at a city. The city here was different from the one on Earth and the Flaming Land. Half of the city here was below. The other half was suspended more than 5,000 meters above the city below. It looked like it was hanging in the air. Between the 2 cities, there were many thick pipes with a diameter of 100 meters connected. He didn't know what they were used to transport. Emosher looked at this novel scene and had a very strange feeling. But before entering the city, he said in his mind, upgrade the Dragon Palace, I will also upgrade. Chapter 563. Before entering the city, Emosher said, that's right. The Dragon Palace will be upgraded, and so will I. The system's voice quickly sounded frowny-faced. The Dragon Palace will be upgraded in 24 hours. The host will be upgraded in 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, the system's voice sounded in Emosher's mind again. Upgrade successful. Name, Emosher, level 4 Super Evolved Dragon, level 10 Long Nian Shi, ability. Click to expand. He had only been here for less than 15 minutes, and he had already leveled up twice. Comfortable. Next, he would hide in the Great Dragon World for a while. After the limelight passed, he would come out to hunt dragons and level up again. These dragons still did not know that in their world, a dangerous dragon hunter had quietly lurked. Of course, lurking was not easy. There were 3,600 life planets in the 10,000 dragon star zone, and there were tens of thousands of dragons on each life planet. But every dragon was recorded in the book. Like the people on Earth, they all had identities. The identity of every dragon was directly tied to their genes. When doing many things, one only needed to scan their genetic code to find out their identity. Of course, there were also some ways to fake the genetic code, but they could not last long. Due to various reasons, there were also some unregistered residents in the 10,000 dragon star zone. They could not be registered. However, such people were in the minority. Emosher entered the street. As he walked, he thought about how to find a way to solve the genetic code. After thinking about it, he could not think of any way. In the end, he shook his head. Let's put the genetic code aside for now. There would be a way when the time came. He was new here and was not familiar with everything here. After familiarizing himself with it, there might be a way to get the genetic code. The dragons on the street were basically in human form. Their clothes looked similar to the humans in the flaming continent. Of course, it was also possible that the clothes of the humans in the flaming continent were designed by the dragons in the laboratory according to the clothes of the dragons in the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone. There were two languages they spoke. One was the ancient dragon language. This language was not only difficult to pronounce, but also cumbersome. A simple, "I've been tricked," had to be said a lot. Of course, this was also determined by the lifespan of the dragons. Their lifespan was very long, easily thousands of years. The stronger they were, the longer their lifespan. Therefore, they did not need to simplify their words. After all, they had plenty of time. However, with the development of the times, under certain circumstances, they had to express their intentions as quickly as possible. Therefore, their civilization also developed a simplified version of their language. Mo sure still couldn't understand their language. After all, his previous foreign language proficiency skill was only limited to species on Earth. Once they left Earth, they no longer cared about anything. But remembering that he hadn't signed today, he asked expectantly. "System, can foreign language proficiency be upgraded?" The system's voice soon frowny face level up by signing in, Mo's heart. Sign. The system's voice frowny face sign successful, sign in reward, foreign language proficiency upgraded to advanced foreign language proficiency. Advanced foreign language proficiency can reach the proficiency level in any species language in the universe. As soon as the system's voice fell, Mo sure understood the meaning of the dragons coming and going on the street. "Brother, the panoramic virtual game I played all night last night was really King exciting. Look at that girl, TSK, she's quite beautiful. Let's go up and chat. I heard that the son of the city lord went to gamble again last night and lost more than 500,000 dragon coins in one night." Mo sure listened to the words of these dragons, full of the aura of the marketplace. Why are they so King intimate? When Mo sure killed the dragons in the laboratory just now, he also swept through the entire laboratory. In the end, he found more than 1,000 dragon coins. At this time, he was also hungry, so he went to fill his stomach first. It was hard to imagine that a civilization as advanced as the dragon race actually used physical currency. Even the most backward Earth used WeChat payment, Alipay, and even face payment. This dragon race civilization was still using the most primitive payment method. At the very least, it was much better to pay by card. In fact, with the technology of the dragon race, they could have used electronic currency long ago. But in the end, they cancelled electronic currency. The reason was that electronic currency was too unsafe. Although with the development of the dragon race's technology, the security of electronic payment had greatly improved, but once the system was hacked, the losses would not be small. Although using physical currency could also be stolen or lost. But no matter how much you lost, how many millions could you lose? Tens of millions? No matter how much was stolen, how many millions could be stolen? Hundreds of millions? But once the electronic currency was hacked, the losses would not be as simple as tens of millions or hundreds of millions. It could easily be trillions. Even bigger things had happened before. More than 2,000 years ago, on a planet in the 10,000 Dragon Star region, the payment system was hacked. The entire planet's monetary system instantly collapsed. The hundreds of millions of dragons on the planet were unable to pay, receive, or buy things for 3 whole days. Since then, the 10,000 Dragon Star region gradually introduced physical currency. In the end, the current dragon coin payment system was formed. These dragons in the laboratory building basically lived in the building every day. Their food and clothes were all sent over by someone, so there was no need to carry dragon coins with them. Therefore, Mo sure only found more than 1,000 dragon coins in the entire building. At this moment, he came to a restaurant that seemed to be very high-end. The table was directly a display screen. He ordered the dishes on the table, and a moment later, a robotic waiter came to deliver the dishes. This robotic waiter was also in human form, and from the outside, it looked like a very beautiful girl. Moreover, in terms of speech and actions, it was exactly the same as a real person. If one did not know, they would not be able to tell that it was a robot. Emosure also used his dragon sense to scan it, and only then did he know that the internal structure of its body was metal. Emosure could not help but sigh. The dragon civilization's technology was really advanced. The food that the dragons ate contained energy. This food could replenish the slowly depleted energy in their bodies. The energy in the dragon's body could be slowly replenished through cultivation, or by eating high-energy food. Of course, such high-energy food was very expensive. 4 dishes cost more than 500 dragon coins. Compared to clothes and accessories, it was much more expensive. One had to know that when Emosure asked the clothing store on the street, a set of men's clothing only cost 50 dragon coins. But so be it, at most, he would just eat those ordinary food in the future. Anyway, he did not need to spend time cultivating to replenish his energy. Chapter 564. After the dishes were served, Emosure looked at the dishes that he had never seen before. The colors of the dishes were bright and appetizing. The giant dragons also used chopsticks. Emosure picked up a dish and tasted it. He felt a wave of fragrance enter his heart. Moreover, it felt like it melted in his mouth. There was no need for him to chew. The energy contained in the dish would quickly flow into his body. In the end, the energy would enter every cell in his body and be stored there. Emosure felt the energy in the dish and couldn't help but nod. No wonder 4 dishes dared to cost over 500 dragon coins. It was really worth it. While eating, Emosure flipped through the memories of the giant dragons. According to the memories, the 10,000 Dragon Tower had a total of 36 million life planets. The planet that Emosure was on was called the Cloud Sea Planet. It was named because there were hundreds of clouds of various sizes on the planet. These clouds were shrouded in clouds all year round. Looking from above the clouds, it was a spectacular sight. The city that Emosure was in was called Hidden Dragon City. There were 4 great families in Hidden Dragon City. The biggest family was the Lei family. The giant dragons of the Lei family were all lightning type. In terms of direct combat strength, lightning type dragons were definitely the best. This was also why the Lei family was able to become the #1 family in Hidden Dragon City. At the same time, the Lei family's head, Lei Ming, was also the Hidden Dragon City's city lord. When Lei Ming was young, he had gone to the battlefield and fought against the insect race. He was a famous hero. He had a son when he was old, Lei Ren. Because his wife spoiled this son, she didn't discipline him properly. Lei Ming also tried to discipline his son, but every time he tried to punish him, his wife would stop him from doing so. Lei Ming also spoiled this wife a lot. Because of this, there was no way to discipline him, causing him to become a famous playboy within 1,000 kilometers. Within 1,000 kilometers, when mentioning playboys, the first name that appeared in everyone's mind was Lei Ren. At this moment, Emosure was eating. At the same time, he was thinking about how to get a new identity. At this moment, footsteps sounded from the stairs. Emosure looked towards the staircase. She saw a handsome young man in his 20s walking up the stairs with 5 servants. The customers who were eating and chatting on the second floor all had a change in expression when they saw these people. Then, they all buried their heads in their food. A few guests seemed to want to get up and leave. However, after a moment of hesitation, he did not dare to get up and continue to eat. From the looks of it, she was afraid that she would attract the attention of that hedonistic young master when she got up and left. Emosure only took a quick glance and cursed in his heart, "Damn, why do all the rich playboys have such good looks?" Then, he ignored him and continued to enjoy the scenery outside the window while eating. Across from the second floor of the restaurant was a large river. White clouds floated leisurely in the sky, and boats came and went on the water surface. The white clouds and the boats on the water formed a sharp contrast. The scenery here was the best. The handsome young man came up and looked around. She stared at Immortal, who was sitting by the window. Ha! When others saw this young master's arrival, they all buried their heads in their food. You, on the other hand, are enjoying the scenery while eating. It seems that you don't put me in your eyes at all. He immediately brought his 5 followers to Immortal's table. The fan in his hand knocked on Immortal's table. Immortal turned his head and glanced at the hedonistic young master and his 5 followers. The hedonistic young master was a rank 1 evolved giant dragon, and his followers were basically rank 3 to 5 evolved giant dragons. In a place where there were ordinary giant dragons, these 6 people were actually evolved giant dragons. It was obvious how powerful the forces behind them were. What's the matter? Immortal asked as he continued to eat. The hedonistic young master sized up Immortal from head to toe. He asked, "Do you recognize me?" Immortal shook his head, not even bothering to respond. Although he had already guessed this guy's identity, so what? I'm eating my food here. I didn't provoke you, so why should I be afraid of you? If you provoke me, I'll destroy your entire Lei family and hide in Earth's space. Who cares? The hedonistic young master's follower snorted coldly. Kid, are your eyeballs for venting anger? You don't even know our young master Lei. Immortal thought to himself, as expected of the Lei family's young master Lei Ren. He shook his head slightly. I'm new here, so it's normal that I don't know young master Lei. Is there a problem? The hedonistic young master with a mustache immediately became angry. Then you know him now. Hurry up and scram. Vacate this treasured place by the window for our young master Lei. Although Lei Ren didn't say anything, he looked at Immortal with a slight smile. Immortal ignored Lei Ren and glanced at the man with a mustache. Do you want a treasured place to bury him? At this moment, the entire second floor suddenly fell silent. Everyone who was eating put down their chopsticks. They all looked at Immortal with their mouths agape. Was this guy crazy? He cursed young Master Lei to die the moment he opened his mouth. Even if you're new here and don't know young Master Lei, you should know that Lei Ren must be related to the City Lord. You obviously know that he's related to the City Lord, but you still want to curse him to die. Are you tired of living? When Lei Ren heard Immortal's words, he immediately frowned. Chapter 565. How dare you hit our Lei family? If you don't leave a leg behind today, don't even think about leaving. The 4 followers beside Lei Ren roared angrily and pounced towards Immortal. The surrounding people wanted to watch the show, but they didn't dare to do so openly. They could only bury their heads in their food and carefully look up. At the same time, they were filled with sympathy for this stranger. Although this guy had some strength, he would definitely suffer if he offended Lei Ren. What? You said Lei Ren offended him first. Please, what's the difference between Lei Ren offending him first and him offending Lei Ren first? However, at this moment, swish 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 swish, 4 black shadows flashed past. The 4 followers were all thrown out of the window. Plop plop, 4 sounds. All 4 of them fell onto the street below. It caused another round of exclamations. The man with the mustache had just climbed up and was about to come up to Immortal to settle the score. But the 4 followers fell down and smashed him to the ground again. Everyone present was shocked. They looked at the stranger in front of them in disbelief. So much so that they even forgot about their fear of Lei Ren. One had to know that the 5 people beside Lei Ren were all evolved dragons. Such a force, within a radius of thousands of kilometers, even if they didn't do as they pleased, they were definitely a first-rate force. But this kid, they didn't even see how he did it and he threw all of them out of the window. Just how strong was he? He was probably at least a 6th order evolved dragon. Or even a 7th order or 8th order. A 9th order dragon was also possible. As for a super evolved dragon, that was naturally impossible. One must know that only one evolved dragon out of 10,000 dragons. Only 1 in 10,000 evolved dragons had the chance to become a super-evolved dragon. Every super-evolved giant dragon was an existence that dominated a region. How could there be such an existence here? However, even if this guy was a 7th order or 8th order evolved dragon, offending the Lei family wouldn't end well for him. One must know that the head of the Lei family, Lei Ming, was a 10th order evolved dragon. He was one step away from becoming a super-evolved dragon. Now that this guy offended the Lei family, wasn't he courting death? Looking at young Master Lei again, as expected, his brows were furrowed and his eyes were filled with anger. The 5 attendants had already gone upstairs again. They angrily surrounded Immortal. However, he didn't dare to make a move. They were no match for this fellow at all. They were waiting for young Master Lei to speak. With just a thought, young Master Lei would be able to send a signal to the Lei clan for help. When the Type 7 and Type 8 experts of the Lei family arrive, would this fellow still be fine? As expected, Lei Ren moved. His eyes blazed with anger. I'll arrange it now. With that, he hurriedly turned his head. Soon, the restaurant's signature dishes were served. A total of 16 dishes were placed on the table. Everyone was still in a state of confusion. What was young Master Lei Ren doing? Immortal didn't care about this. Since someone was treating, let's eat first. He ordered 4 ordinary dishes and it cost 500 dragon coins. Now that there were so many signature dishes, it would cost at least a few thousand dragon coins. So, he ate first. The surrounding people were all envious. If they could eat an ordinary meal, it would cost more than 10 days of their salary. Now, this meal was more than a month of their salary. Most importantly, he was being treated by someone. Of course, they didn't want to be the one being treated. Who would dare to eat young Master Lei Ren's treat? This outsider was still talking so happily. Didn't he know young Master Lei Ren's temper? Young Master Lei Ren saw that Wang Yi not only didn't stand on ceremony, but also ate so happily. The smile on his face became even wider. Distinguished guest, may I know your name? Immortal didn't hesitate and directly said Immortal. Anyway, he was an illegal resident and couldn't be found. There was no difference whether it was a real or fake name here. So it's Mr. Mo. I've heard a lot about you. Lei Ren hurriedly cupped his fists and said. While eating, Immortal replied, that's right. You don't even know me. What's there to hear? Chapter 566. You don't even know me. What's there to look up to? Immortal retorted with a single sentence. He really didn't have a good impression of this guy. Everyone around was speechless. It was just a polite greeting. What did he want others to look up to? And this was young Master Lei Ren. He said that he had heard a lot about you, and you actually asked him what he had heard about you. Wasn't this too unappreciative? Young Master Lei Ren should be angry this time. However, to their surprise, Lei Ren was stunned for a moment, and then laughed. He said, Mr. Mo is too humorous. I just feel close to Mr. Mo as soon as I see him. Then he sat down on the chair next to Wang Yi and said, Mr. Mo, you don't know. Since I was young, everyone who saw me either ran away or obeyed me. I wanted to interact with them as an ordinary person, but what I got in return was alienation. It's rare to see someone like you, who treats me like an ordinary person. It seems that I'm fated to meet you. Today, let's drink until we're drunk. As he spoke, he poured a glass of wine for Immortal. Then he poured himself a glass. Then he clinked his glass with Immortal's and said, Mr. Mo, then I'll drink first. Then he drank the glass of wine in one gulp. Immortal didn't know what kind of medicine this guy was selling in his gourd. He immediately plundered this guy's memory and took a look. With this look, he couldn't help but understand. What this guy said was actually the truth. Although this guy was known as the #1 playboy in a radius of thousands of kilometers. But apart from the arrogant and domineering appearance on the surface, his mind was actually very simple. Imagine, he grew up under the protection of his parents, and no one dared to say no to him. Everything he encountered was always smooth sailing. How shrewd could such a person be? And what he said was that he saw that Emosher's attitude towards him was completely different from other people's attitude towards him, so he was very interested in Emosher. This was also true. Thinking of this, Emosher shook his head, picked up the glass of wine, and drank it in one gulp. Lei Ren was overjoyed when he saw that Emosher had finally reacted. She quickly filled Emosher's glass to the brim. Then, he filled his cup and raised it, saying, "Just now, my blind servants offended Mr. Emo. I'll punish myself by drinking 3 cups as an apology to Mr. Emo." As he spoke, he drank 3 glasses in a row. Everyone was speechless when they saw this. It was getting harder and harder to understand. When Emosher saw that this fellow had punished himself with 3 cups of wine, he no longer cared about the matter of being offended by this fellow's servants. He said, all right, let's forget about this matter. I'm not a narrow-minded person." From Lei Ren's memories, Emosher knew that not only was the Lei family powerful, but the brothers of the Lei family who had been on the battlefield were now officials all over the planet. Some of them were even transferred to other higher-level planets. Therefore, as long as he could get on the Lei family's good side, getting a new genetic code should be a piece of cake. Of course, this genetic code couldn't be Emosher's own. Otherwise, if he committed a crime, they would be able to find out his genetic code based on any traces of hair or skin left behind at the scene. Therefore, this matter had to be faked. If it was faked in private, it would be easily exposed. But if it was faked by the government, then it would be faked to be real. He knew that this Lei Ren lacked someone who could talk to him as an equal, and not someone he had to curry favor with. Therefore, if he wanted to get this fellow, he couldn't be like the others and lower himself in front of him, but he couldn't always act high and mighty either. When Lei Ren saw that Emosher had spoken, he was instantly overjoyed. He said, "Mr. Emo, we hit it off at first sight today. Let's drink until we're drunk, how about that?" Emosher nodded, then, the two of them started drinking. Everyone's eyes widened when they saw this. They started drinking just like that. Would beating up young Master Lei's servants make young Master Lei happy? This was really unfathomable. The two of them drank for more than 3 hours. After Lei Ren drank too much, he was completely like a child. Thinking about it, after all, he was only in his 20s. He grew up under the wings of his parents since he was young. 3 hours later, it was noon. Emosher was already slightly drunk. This surprised him. With his strength, he wouldn't get drunk no matter how much wine he drank in the flaming beginning continent. He didn't expect that here, the two of them only drank 5 bottles of wine, and their heads were slightly dizzy. It seemed that the wine here was also made. In fact, Emosher's guess was right. All the wine in the myriad dragon realm contained a trace element. If one ingested too much of this trace element, it would be like drinking wine, with slow reactions, dizziness and nausea. In serious cases, one would even vomit. At this time, Lei Ren was already tongue-tied and his words were unclear. He put his arm around Wang Yi's shoulder and said, "Mo. Brother Mo, let me tell you. I, Lei Ren, have never made a close friend in my life. Those guys who are familiar with me are all F***king, bad friends, fair-weather friends. You are, the only close friend I've made in my life. We are sworn brothers. I'll call you brother in the future." "You call me brother." Emosher saw that this guy had drunk too much, so he stuck his head out of the window. He shouted to the servants at the door, "Your master is drunk, send him back." Hearing this, the servants hurriedly went up to the 2nd floor. Seeing Lei Ren's drunken appearance, they hurriedly helped Lei Ren up. At the same time, they were very surprised by Immortal. What magic could this guy have? He was obviously cursing the young master to die, but in the end, he could make the young master spend money to treat him to wine. He was also very drunk. How could this be reasonable? Lei Ren saw that the crowd was about to take him away, so he hurriedly said, "Mo. Brother Mo, please stay in our Lei family for a few days. I still have a lot to say. I want to tell you. I will treat you well." Mo sure shook his head. If he went to the Lei family rashly, with Lei Ming's experience, he would definitely be on guard against him. "Young Master Lei, let's do it another day. I'm afraid it will be inconvenient for me to disturb the Lei family rashly." "No," Lei Ren broke free from the hands of the mustache man and said, "There's no need to do it another day, it's better to do it now. Today, you must go. Or else. You look down on me, Lei Ren." Immortal nodded, "Then I'll look down on you." Lei Ren laughed and leaned on Immortal's shoulder. "Brother Mo is so humorous. Let's go. If you don't leave today, I won't leave either." Then he shouted, "Manager, add a few more dishes, and bring 2 more bottles of wine, we will continue to drink." Chapter 567. Immortal did not want to go to the Lei family immediately. But he was entangled by Lei Ren. "Brother Mo, if you don't go today, I won't leave either." As he spoke, he asked the manager to serve the wine and dishes. The servants looked at Immortal, each of them revealing a trace of pleading eyes. Master had stipulated that they must bring the young master back before lunch every day. Otherwise, they would be punished for their crimes. Immortal also wanted to build a good relationship with the Lei family, so he nodded. "All right, I'll send you back then." The few servants were overjoyed when they saw this. They quickly helped Lei Ren up and walked towards the house. Soon, Immortal followed them to the Lei family's house. It was also the Hidden Dragon City's City Lord Mansion. The City Lord Mansion was grand and majestic. There were 2 stone dragon statues at the entrance. Each of them was more than 10 meters long and 3 meters tall. What surprised Immortal was that these 2 dragon statues were exactly the same as the divine dragons in Chinese mythology. Prawn eyes, antlers, cow nose, dog mouth, catfish whiskers, lion mane, eagle claws, fish scales, snake tail. The 2 divine dragons were of different shapes. One of them stepped on a cloud and roared towards the sky. The other body was like a ring, looking down at the earth. It implied that the dragon beast controlled the power of heaven and earth. Their claws, teeth, and scales were all carved vividly. Lei Ren saw that Immortal was staring at the 2 stone dragons. He could not help but laugh and say, "In the legends of the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone. In ancient times, when the dragon race had just appeared, there was a strange beast called the Dragon Beast. This dragon beast could control the power of heaven and earth. It could summon clouds, summon rain, thunder, lightning, frost, and hail. Everything was controlled by the dragon beast." Ha ha ha. This was what my mother told me when I was 4 years old. I thought it was amazing. When I grew up, I realized that these were all tricks for children. As he spoke, he patted the stone dragon head that was facing the sky. If there really is a dragon beast, why hasn't it appeared for hundreds of thousands of years? When those few servants saw the situation, they hurriedly supported Lei Ren and walked towards the City Lord Manor. Lei Ren then dragged Immortal into the City Lord's mansion. Very quickly, Lei Ren was sent by Lei Ming to the backyard of the Lei family to sober up. Immortal originally wanted to leave, but he was stopped by Thundercry. Lei Ming looked like he was in his 50s on Earth. Actually, he was already over 5,000 years old. He had a full beard on his face, making him look like a rugged man. However, he did not know how many dragons in the officialdom had been paralyzed by his boorish appearance and eventually fell into his hands. Lei Ming heard from a few servants that Lei Ren and Mo Shi had been drinking together. He immediately ordered someone to bring out a cup of tea and said with a chuckle, "Mr. Mo, my son has never had a close friend in his life. Today, we hit it off at first sight and drank a few more cups. I'm sorry for the trouble. This is a cup of sobering tea. Mr. Mo, please enjoy it while it's still hot." Mo Shi picked up the teacup and drained it in one gulp. It was indeed good tea. After drinking it, he felt refreshed. However, from Lei Ming's memories, he knew that Lei Ming had asked people to drink tea to test him. Lei Ming was not as simple as Lei Ren. Lei Ming had fought his way through the battlefield and had been in the officialdom for thousands of years. His shrewdness was not something an ordinary person could compare to. His son had suddenly brought someone back for no reason. Naturally, he had to test him. It looked like he was inviting Mo Shi to drink tea, but in fact, he was using the action of drinking tea to find out about Mo Shi's family background. If a person had a good family background, there would be many rules and regulations when drinking tea. Therefore, he had to find out what kind of background this person had. Should he befriend or avoid this person? On the other hand, if it was a small family, drinking tea would be to quench their thirst. Naturally, there would not be so many rules. Instead, he drank in big gulps. For such a person, the Lei family could easily manipulate him. Naturally, they would not have so many worries. At this moment, seeing Mo Shi drinking in big gulps, Lei Ming smiled and nodded. Mr. Mo is not a local, right? He could tell at a glance that Mo Shi was not a local. If Mo Shi had not plundered his memories, he would not have known how shrewd this guy was. Every sentence, every word, was a test. Mo Shi nodded, no. He did not reply further. The more he spoke, the more likely he would slip up. At the same time, he thought to himself, if I knew this guy was so shrewd, I would not have come. Now, I don't even dare to say a word. Lei Ming could also tell that Mo Shi was unwilling to speak, so he did not ask further. Instead, he said, since Mr. Mo is here, please stay with the Lei family for a few days. It is rare for my son to have a close friend. If Mr. Lei does not have any urgent matters, please spend more time with him. Of course, the Lei family will not treat Mr. Mo badly. I, Lei Ming, only have one son. As long as he is happy, everything is negotiable. Mo Shi pretended to be in a difficult position. After hesitating for a while, he said, okay. That night, Mo Shi was arranged to stay with the Lei family. At the same time, Lei Ming called the 5 servants over and asked them to report what they had seen and heard today. When he heard that they did not see how Mo Shi did it and threw the servants out of the window, Lei Ming's eyebrows twitched slightly. Based on his experience, such a guy was either from the big sects of the 10,000 Dragon Star Zone or a fugitive wanted by the universe. According to what the 5 servants said, Mr. Mo's strength should be about the 7th or 8th level, or even the 8th or 9th level of the evolved giant dragon. Of course, it was also possible that he was at the 10th level. If he really reached the 10th level, he would be an absolute expert. How could such a person associate with his thoughtless son? Then, Lei Ming sent people to check Mo Shi's bottom line. As long as this guy left any trace within a radius of thousands of kilometers, he could find it. However, the next morning, the 2 people who went to check came back to report, Mayor, there is no news about this guy. His news is only limited to when he entered the city yesterday. It's as if this guy suddenly popped out yesterday. Lei Ming pondered for a while. After a while, he said, if that's the case, then he's probably a senior expert who has been in seclusion for thousands of years. Naturally, we can't find any traces of him. Or he's a member of a more powerful sect or family. No matter where he goes, he can easily erase the traces he leaves behind. But judging from his speech and behavior, he doesn't look like someone from a big sect or family. Then, he's probably a senior expert who has been in seclusion. Lei Hui's heart skipped a beat. If he was really a senior expert who had been in seclusion, then his strength must have surpassed his own. He had reached the super-evolved giant dragon. Although there was only one level between a 10th level evolved giant dragon and a super-evolved giant dragon. But this level was like a natural chasm. He basically had no chance of becoming a super-evolved giant dragon in his life. Maybe there was a little illogical here. Would such a senior expert like him take a fancy to his heartless son and become close friends with him? In fact, it was really possible. And it was very likely. Based on his experience of reading countless people, the stronger the giant dragon, the weirder their personality. Especially many seniors who had reached the super-evolved giant dragon level. Because they had been in seclusion for many years, they basically did not see anyone. Each of them had a very strange personality. For example, he had once seen a big boss who liked to cross-dress. A big boss who liked to steal other giant dragon eggs for no other reason than to eat them. What's more, they liked to collect other giant dragons' poop. It was said that from the poop, one could tell the giant dragon's personality, cultivation, and even where they had been and how many female dragons they had slept with. In comparison, this Mr. Mo seemed much more normal. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.